Chapter 1126. Zhong, is this your hometown? The handsome blonde man asked Gu Xingyin curiously. Gu Xingyin nodded. Ladle, follow me. Be careful not to get lost. The man quickly leaned forward and put one hand on Gu Xingyin's waist. He lowered his head and whispered in Gu Xingyin's ear, I will follow Zhong closely. Gu Xingyin's expression didn't change. Ladle, do you want me to replace you for my recent show? The arm around her waist suddenly dropped. Ladle sighed and said, you Orientals are always so boring. Gu Xingyin glanced at him. This is called being reserved. I'm not as unprincipled as you. Ladle shrugged. This industry has always been like this. The fashion industry was originally a very messy industry. Men and women, everyone looked at each other and had a consensual one-night stand. It was too common. Gu Xingyin was young, good-looking, and talented in fashion design. It could be said that her future was almost smooth. There were undoubtedly a lot of models who wanted to develop a relationship with such a designer beyond work. But it was obvious that Gu Xingyin had no interest in this. What made Gu Xingyin dumbfounded was that there were women in addition to men looking for her. Homosexuality was very common in the fashion industry. There was even a saying that 9 out of 10 men in the fashion industry were gay. After a few words with Ladle, the others returned to the hotel they had booked. Gu Xingyin went directly to the Zhong family. It had been more than 2 years since she had last returned home. She had only come back once in the 5 years she had been abroad. That time, she had been in a hurry and hadn't been able to stay at home for long. This time, she had returned to China because there would be a fashion show here. She had prepared several works of her own. As for Ladle, he was a very famous supermodel in the industry. He was a model whose name was on the supermodel rankings. The fact that Gu Xingyin was able to invite him could be said to have benefited from his teacher. Mr. Zhong had already received news that his daughter was coming back. Today, he pushed back all his work and waited at home for his daughter's return. Dad! As soon as Gu Xingyin got home, she gave her father a big hug. Mr. Zhong's eyes were filled with tears as he looked at his daughter whom he hadn't seen in 2 years. My Huanhuan has become prettier again. He wasn't lying. After being in the fashion industry for several years, Zhong Zhanghuan's overall image had changed greatly. Small details like dressing could inadvertently change a person's impression to others. Overall, the current Gu Xingyin looked much more exquisite than before. Will you stay at home for a while this time? Mr. Zhong asked. Gu Xingyin had already calculated that in the first half of this year, other than this fashion show, she had nothing else to prepare. As for the usual designs, he could also complete them at home. She smiled and said, Don't worry, Dad. I can stay at home for a few months. Mr. Zhong looked at his daughter and suddenly remembered something. Have you found a boyfriend in the past few years abroad? Gu Xingyin covered her face. How old am I? Dad, how worried are you that I won't be able to get married? Mr. Zhong sighed. I'm not worried about that. He still asked, have you been in contact with him in the past few years? The him he was referring to was Lin Zhe. Back then, Gu Xingyin had told him that the person she liked was Lin Zhe. In the past few years, Mr. Zhong had also admired Lin Zhe. However, he didn't know what was going on between the two, so he asked. Chapter 1127. Gu Xingyin was silent for a moment before she said, Dad, don't worry about this. I'm still young. Seeing that she didn't want to talk about it, Father Zhong could only go along with it. Okay. Dad won't interfere with you. You can do whatever you want, okay? Only then did Gu Xingyin smile. The father and daughter had a happy meal. On the other side, Lin Zhe also knew that Gu Xingyin had returned to China. Under his influence, Song Tao had been paying attention to Gu Xingyin for the past few years. Of course, he also knew that she had returned to China. He received a phone call. "Lin Zhe, let me tell you. If you really like her, go for her if you're a man. Take advantage of this opportunity. Otherwise, I heard that there are so many handsome models in the fashion industry. Be careful that your Zhong Huan will be seduced by some handsome guy." Lin Zhe responded in a low voice. He was reading a newspaper with a big photo. Gu Xingyin was walking with a blonde foreign man. The two of them were very intimate. The man even put his hand on Gu Xingyin's waist. The headlines on the newspaper were naturally aimed at the gimmick. New designer Zhong Zhonghuan's mysterious boyfriend in the industry, new designer and model boyfriend show off their love in high profile. Whether it was the photos or the comments, in Lin Zhe's eyes, they were extremely dazzling. Song Tao was still talking on the other side of the phone, but Lin Zhe's mind was no longer here. In the evening, Gu Xingyin's phone rang. She took the phone and looked at it. It was an unknown number. Worried that it was from a business partner, Gu Xingyin picked it up. "Hello." There was no word on the other side of the phone for a long time. Gu Xingyin seemed to have expected something and didn't speak again. The two sides fell into a long silence until Gu Xingyin said, "No matter who you are, if you don't speak, I'll hang up." "Zhonghuan." Lin Zhe finally spoke. After 5 years, Gu Xingyin almost didn't recognize the man's voice. "Do you have time tomorrow?" Gu Xingyin said bluntly, "Time? Are you going to break up with me again?" Lin Zhe hurriedly said, "Zhonghuan, I had a reason for that time. I didn't mean to stand you up. Let me explain." "When and where?" Gu Xingyin interrupted him. "Do you really want to listen to my explanation?" Lin Zhe only realized what Gu Xingyin was saying halfway through. He was overjoyed and quickly reported a time and a place. "All right, save your explanation for tomorrow. I'm going to rest now." The other party didn't seem to want to talk to him anymore, but Lin Zhe was already quite satisfied. "Good night then." Gu Xingyin hung up the phone. The next day, Gu Xingyin arrived at the meeting place on time. This time, Lin Zhe didn't miss the appointment. In fact, he arrived at the meeting place an hour early. When Gu Xingyin sat down, she sized him up carefully. In 5 years, this man had changed drastically. His appearance had completely matured. Unlike the exquisiteness of an 18-year-old boy, the edges of a man were revealed. Compared to 5 years ago, he was less exquisite and more handsome. In general, whether it was the Lin Zhe 5 years ago or the Lin Zhe 5 years later, he would always be the type that women liked. Lin Zhe was also looking at Gu Xingyin greedily. Actually, he had been paying attention to her changes in the past few years. But knowing and seeing with one's own eyes were two completely different concepts. Chapter 11:28. Gu Xingyin looked up and saw Lin Zhe's dark and deep eyes staring at her without blinking. "What do you want to tell me today? Tell me." Gu Xingyin picked up the coffee in her hand and took a sip. Lin Zhe thought for a moment and decided to start with the matter of him standing her up. After all, this was a misunderstanding between the two of them. Gu Xingyin listened to his story without saying a word. "So, Zhonghuan, I really didn't mean to make you wait for nothing," Lin Zhe said anxiously. Gu Xingyin's expression didn't change after hearing all this. I know. This has nothing to do with you. I don't blame you," she said casually. Lin Zhe's heart sank. To be honest, he would rather the person opposite him react more strongly after hearing his words, or even scold him. Because that meant that the other party had been brooding over this matter all these years and couldn't forget him. However, Gu Xingyin's calm reaction made it seem as if the incident back then was just a small matter in her eyes, unremarkable. Then what about her feelings for him? Did it disappear with the passage of time, just like what happened to this matter? Lin Zhe suddenly felt that the air seemed to have thinned. He clenched the cup in his hand and asked with difficulty, "How have you been all these years?" Gu Xingyin was the opposite of her. She was extremely relaxed. "Not bad." There was silence again. Gu Xingyin slowly stirred the coffee in her hand with a coffee spoon and waited for Lin Zhe to speak. Lin Zhe paused for a moment and finally said, "Then, have you had anyone by your side all these years?" "What do you mean?" Gu Xingyin asked with a faint smile. Lin Zhe looked up at her. Gu Xingyin's eyes were very clear, as if there was nothing in them. But Lin Zhe knew that she did it on purpose. She wanted to force him to say what was in his heart. Lin Zhe closed his eyes and finally said the words that had been in his heart for 5 years. "I like you, Zhan Huan. Can I pursue you?" After saying that, he stared at Gu Xingyin, wanting to see his reaction. Gu Xingyin looked up at the man in front of her and sighed in her heart. It had been 5 years, but this man was still so inexperienced when it came to love. She nodded without hesitation. "I don't have a boyfriend." "Of course I can." Before Lin Zhe could rejoice, she continued, "As I said back then, you pursuing me is your own business. It has nothing to do with me." She looked at Lin Zhe with a strange expression. "If you said this to me 5 years ago, I would probably be very happy. But now, Lin Zhe, it's too late." "No." Lin Zhe's gaze locked onto her. "It's not too late. As long as she wasn't in love or married, he wouldn't be late." Gu Xingyin raised her wrist and looked at the time. "I have to meet my teacher in the afternoon, so I can't chat with you anymore." Lin Zhe said, "I'll drive you." Gu Xingyin shook her head. "I drove here myself. I won't trouble you." Gu Xingyin walked out of the cafe, leaving Lin Zhe sitting there alone. After a long while, he made a call. Song Dao arrived quickly. Lin Zhe's first sentence was, "I met Zhan Huan." Song Dao looked at him carefully and realized that he didn't look too happy, but he didn't look too disappointed either. So, what was the situation? Chapter 1129. Lin Zhe briefly recounted the conversation between the two of them. Song Tao's eyes widened. After hearing this, he didn't know why, but he suddenly felt a sense of schadenfreude. He coughed dryly and said, "So, it's really as I expected. As the saying goes, every dog has its day. It's your turn now." Lin Zhe glanced at him and frowned. "Tell me, what do you think Zhan Huan means?" Song Dao was about to despair at his brother's EQ. He held his forehead. "Do you still need to ask? Hurry up and chase after her." Lin Zhe glanced at him. "Of course I know. I won't give up. I'm just not sure what she means to me now." Song Dao looked at him with disappointment. "I really wonder how you managed to gain a foothold in the Lin Corporation. If you brought half of your IQ in the business world to love, you and Zhong Zhanghuan probably wouldn't be like this now. If she really gave up on you and didn't like you anymore, would she still tacitly let you pursue her? With Zhan Huan's qualifications, if she didn't have feelings for you, would she have no one by her side for 5 years? This girl is obviously throwing a tantrum. There's no problem. You've wasted so many years of her time. It's only right for her to throw a tantrum and want to punish you." Song Dao egged his good friend on. "This time, don't let go of this opportunity. No matter how much Zhong Zhanghuan likes you, you should really thank the heavens that a girl can do this for you." Lin Zhe's heart was suddenly enlightened. He said to Song Dao, "Thank you, brother. When I get Zhan Huan, I'll treat you to a meal." Song Dao looked at his energetic appearance and sighed in his heart. "I'm afraid you're going to suffer this time." What he said just now was indeed what he was thinking. It was just that he didn't say some things, afraid that it would dampen his good friend's enthusiasm. Based on his understanding of Zhong Zhanghuan, this girl wasn't willing to suffer losses. She had probably given Lin Zhe the biggest concession in her life. Now that Lin Zhe wanted to start over, it wouldn't be easy. But thinking about it from another perspective, if he, Song Dao, met someone like Lin Zhe and wanted to start over? If I don't torment you until you're half dead, I won't be called Song Dao. Therefore, regarding the fate that his good friend was about to face, Song Tao expressed his love, joy, and wish that he could, help, see. On the other side, Lin Zhe returned to the company and immediately asked his secretary to think of a way to get Gu Xingyin's group's activity plan, which was the itinerary for a period of time in the future. This kind of thing wasn't too confidential, and he could get his hands on it with some effort. However, the secretary was a little confused as he looked at the task given to him by his general manager. Could it be that he had guessed wrong? Was the general manager actually a fashion maniac? She shook her head and threw these strange thoughts out of her mind. It wasn't easy to find out about her boss's gossip. She just had to obediently complete the tasks assigned to her by the higher-ups. To be able to become the general manager's secretary, her ability was naturally not for show. That afternoon, a thick itinerary appeared in front of Lin Zhe's desk. Lin Zhe flipped through the pages one by one. Secretary Wang, postpone everything for tomorrow morning. I have something to do in the morning. Yes, General Manager. Secretary Wang was a little puzzled. There was originally a department report meeting tomorrow morning, but it seemed like he could only push it to the afternoon. However, he hadn't heard of any activities for the general manager before. Chapter 1130. After Secretary Wang left and closed the door, Lin Zhe slowly ticked off some items with a pen. 9 a.m. on the 13th, the whole day on the 15th, and 1:30 p.m. on the 16th, these were all activities related to Zhong Zhanghuan on the itinerary. Zhong, are you nervous? Radel approached Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin looked at him calmly. I'm fine. Radel looked at her in disbelief. Zhong, why are you so calm every time? This is your first fashion show in your hometown. Gu Xingyin nodded. That's right. She turned to look at Radel. But no matter how nervous I am, will it change the result of my fashion show? Radel looked at Gu Xingyin speechlessly. That's right, but Zhong, emotionally speaking, it's normal to be nervous, expectant, and excited at this time, isn't it? Gu Xingyin raised her eyebrows and looked at him. Who said I'm not excited? Her eyes flickered with the light of determination to win. This show can only have one result, and that is success. Radel looked at such a woman with some fascination. This enigmatic Oriental woman always refreshed his understanding of her again and again. It should be very interesting to be with such a woman, right? For the first time, Radel, a playboy, began to think about the idea of spending his life with a woman. The tea stage was very busy now, and all kinds of preparations were in full swing. Gu Xingyin raised her hand and looked at the time. You should go and prepare for my opening model. That's right, Radel was the opening model of Gu Xingyin's fashion show. The most important part of a fashion show was the opening and the finale. The opening and finale models also reflected a designer's connections and status in the fashion industry to a large extent. With Radel's status, even if it was a top designer's fashion show, he was enough to be the opening model. Radel suddenly turned sideways and hugged her. I wish you all the best, Zhanghuan. The two words, Zhanghuan, were actually in Chinese. Gu Xingyin was stunned for a moment. She could hear the encouragement and blessing in his words. She hugged Radel back and smiled. Thank you for your blessing, Radel. Radel suddenly said, how's my Chinese? Zhong, this is something that I specially found someone to learn for 2 hours. Gu Xingyin couldn't help but laugh. Well said. Then. Radel blinked and leaned over. Can I pursue you? Zhanghuan. Gu Xingyin turned around in surprise. Seeing Rader's rare serious expression, she shook her head. We're not suited for each other, Raider. Raider shrugged. How would we know if we don't try? Without waiting for Gu Xingyin to speak, he turned and left. I'll go and prepare first. Seeing Raider leave, Gu Xingyin breathed a sigh of relief. She had just seen seriousness in Raider's eyes. It seemed that she needed to have a good chat with Ladle after this fashion show. The two of them were not suitable for each other. No one knew that the interaction between the two of them had been witnessed by another person. Lin Zhe saw Gu Xingyin, who had obviously dressed up, chatting intimately with another man. He knew the man. It was the male model Radel who had been photographed with her intimately not long ago. Chapter 1131. Lin Zhe felt that his footsteps were very heavy. He came here full of passion and confidence to win back Gu Xingyin's heart. All his chances of success had to be based on the fact that the other party didn't have a new sweetheart. He should feel confident, but seeing this situation, he suddenly felt uncertain. Maybe they were just good friends. After all, foreigners like to use exaggerated body movements to show their love. Lin Zhe calmed himself down and walked to Gu Xingyin's side. Zhan Huan. Gu Xingyin turned around and saw the well-dressed man standing behind her. This man wasn't wearing a suit and leather shoes, which was rare. Gu Xingyin had to admit that Lin Zhe's appearance was indeed unique. In the past few years, she had seen countless handsome, tall, and stylish male models, but in terms of appearance, it was difficult to surpass Lin Zhe. That was the fashion industry, which was known as the gathering place of beauties. Gu Xingyin asked in surprise, "What are you doing here?" Lin Zhe looked into her eyes. The other party's eyes were very sincere. It was obvious that this sentence came from the bottom of her heart. In other words, Zhan Huan felt that it was strange for him to appear here. Lin Zhe's breath stagnated. He said, "Zhan Huan, did you take what I said yesterday to heart? I said that I want to pursue you." Gu Xingyin raised her eyebrows. "So, you're pursuing me now?" Lin Zhe retorted, "Specifically, since we met yesterday." Gu Xingyin nodded. "Okay, I got it." She turned around and was about to leave. Lin Zhe stopped her. "Zhan Huan, what do you mean?" "What do you mean?" Lin Zhe felt a little helpless. "I just saw you and that ladle." Gu Xingyin looked sideways at him. "Ladle and me?" Gu Xingyin's mind turned and suddenly sneered. "Lin Zhe, do you think I, Zhang Huan, am the kind of woman who would flirt with you when I already have a boyfriend?" Her expression suddenly turned cold. "Lin Zhe, don't think too highly of yourself, and don't think too highly of me." She suddenly felt tired. Lin Zhe watched as the other party turned around and left without looking back. His hand grabbed her hand faster than his thought. "Zhan Huan, that's not what I meant." Gu Xingyin struggled. "Let go of me." Lin Zhe's hand didn't move. "Look back at me, Zhan Huan." Gu Xingyin turned around impatiently, but was momentarily stunned by the heaviness in his eyes. She had never seen such a helpless and sad expression on Lin Zhe's face. At this moment, Lin Zhe unreservedly exposed all his uneasiness and apprehension for the past 5 years in front of Gu Xingyin. "I'm very uneasy, Zhan Huan. For the past 5 years, I've been thinking about you all the time, and I've also despised myself for being useless. I'm afraid that you've forgotten about me. I'm afraid that you found someone you like more. Give me a chance, okay?" Gu Xingyin admitted that when she saw Lin Zhe like this, her heart softened for a moment. But it was only for a moment. Her tone softened for a moment. "I have something to do now, Lin Zhe." Lin Zhe's expression became lonely. He obediently let go of Gu Xingyin's hand. Gu Xingyin watched him lower his eyelids, his long eyelashes fluttering like butterflies. The light shone down, casting a shadow on his face. At this moment, she saw a sense of vulnerability in this man. Chapter 1132. Resisting the urge to comfort him, Gu Xingyin turned around and went backstage. Turning around, Ladle leaned against the wall with his arms crossed and looked at Gu Xingyin. Is that man the reason why you rejected me? At this time, he had already changed his clothes. The black hard metal style of the fashion set off the man like a king in the dark night. Gu Xingyin looked up at him. It has nothing to do with anyone, Ladle. We're not suitable for each other. Ladle still had a cynical smile on his face. Why? Gu Xingyin said, what I need is a lover who will be loyal to me for the rest of my life. Ladle, ask yourself, can you do that? Without waiting for Ladle to speak, she immediately said, okay, hurry up and put on your makeup. Be careful not to be late. She immediately went backstage to see the models who were about to go on stage later. Ladle was left standing there alone. After a long time, the smile on his lips fell. How do you know that I can't be loyal to you for the rest of my life, Zhanghuan? Gu Xingyin's fashion show finally opened with all the preparations complete. Throughout the whole process, Gu Xingyin sat below the stage and carefully observed every detail. When the last model came on stage, the warm applause from the audience told her that it was a success. The fashion show ended perfectly. Countless reporters had already turned their eyes to the designers of these fashions. Ms. Zhong Zhanghuan, why did you come to this city to hold a fashion show? Do you think this fashion show was a success? About you and the famous model Ladle, Lin Zhe looked at Gu Xingyin, who was surrounded by reporters. He had a feeling that he would never be able to get involved in her world. Gu Xingyin answered the reporters' questions with a smile the entire time. When it was about time, she smiled and said, that's all for today's interview. If there are any more questions, my assistant will answer them on my behalf later. Escorted by her assistants, she passed through the turbulent crowd and disappeared from everyone's sight. As soon as she got in the car, Gu Xingyin received a text from Lin Zhe. Very good. She put her phone aside. When she left, she saw Lin Zhe standing quietly outside the crowd. The other party had been watching her until she managed to escape. She rubbed her eyebrows. What was the most unbearable thing for women? A cold and powerful man who only showed his inner fragility and tenderness to you. Especially when he didn't tell you anything. All he did was silently protect you with his gaze and concern. Gu Xingyin admitted that she was a little shaken. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. Lin Zhe, if you want to get my heart, this is far from enough. Lin Zhe drove home and walked out of the garage to the door. He happened to see a package being delivered to his door. The man's eyes lit up when he saw Gu Xingyin. Are you Miss Zhong Zhanghuan? Gu Xingyin nodded. Hello. The man handed her the package in his hand. There's a package for you. Gu Xingyin hesitantly took it, signed her name, and carried it home. She remembered that she didn't buy anything. She sat in the living room and opened the package. It was a huge crystal gift box, but the thing inside was covered with something so mysterious. Gu Xingyin slowly opened the gift box and lifted the thing that was used to cover it. The thing that was revealed made her breath stop for a moment. Chapter 1133. A crystal box full of perfumed lilies. These perfumed lilies were still at their most beautiful moment. Each of them was in full bloom. Gu Xingyin could even smell the refreshing fragrance of the lilies. Perfumed lilies were Zhong Zhanghuan's favorite flowers. Gu Xingyin touched them with her finger. She didn't know what method he used to make these perfumed lilies into such lifelike specimens. Between these beautiful and delicate flowers, there was a simple and elegant piece of paper. On it were beautiful words written with a fountain pen. May your beauty and talent be like these perfumed lilies, never withering. Happiness and smiles will always take care of you, Fu Xinghuan. Fu Xinghuan. This was Gu Xingyin's self-introduction to Lin Zhe when she and Lin Zhe officially met for the first time. My name is Zhong Zhanghuan, Zhong for love at first sight, Zhanghuan for joy. Her mood suddenly became very good. He knew how to be romantic, so he wasn't too hopeless. Gu Xingyin placed the crystal box of perfumed lilies on the bedside table in her room. On the other side, Lin Zhe was scribbling something on his notebook with a pen. When Secretary Wang came in, he saw the general manager's serious look. It was said that a man in a serious state of work was the most handsome. Secretary Wang narrowed his eyes and admired his general manager's beautiful face. In the end, he didn't dare to disturb Lin Zhe and quietly put the document in his hand on the desk. At this time, if Secretary Wang had the courage to take a look at Lin Zhe's notebook, he would find that the other party was seriously studying not some business secret or important decision, but, how to make your sweetheart happy. Some of the words had already been crossed out with red lines, such as a sincere confession. The latest one to be crossed out was to give her her favorite thing. As for Lin Zhe, he was staring at his notebook and struggling with what to do next. Gu Xingyin had also been troubled recently. Because she didn't know why Ladle had gone crazy and started to pursue her. Of course, Ladle had said this to Gu Xingyin many times. But this time, it seemed like he was serious. Because this morning, Randall suddenly came to Gu Xingyin. I've already severed all ties with them. Now, do I have the right to pursue you forever, Zhanhuan? Gu Xingyin felt a headache coming on as she looked at Ladle's serious expression. What was he doing here at a time like this? In all fairness, Ladle was handsome, humorous, and rich. He was indeed a good choice for a lover. But that was for other girls. For Gu Xingyin, Ladle was a very good friend. But that was how it was. The relationship between the two could only go this far. She stopped herself and said, Radel, I told you a long time ago that we are not suitable. Radel lowered his head. Gu Xingyin's height of 1.7 meters was so petite in front of him. Is it because we're not suitable for each other, or are you unwilling? Gu Xingyin fell silent. She raised her head. Both. Radel, let me tell you clearly. I already have someone I like, and I will be with him for the rest of my life. Radel's smile fell. I don't believe you, Zhanhuan. I've known you for so many years, but I've never seen a man in front of you. Zhong Zhanghuan looked at him seriously. You've seen it, Radel. Don't deceive yourself. Chapter 1134. Radel's eyes trembled. Is it the man from that day? That man had left a deep impression on Radel. His first reaction was him. It turned out that he was right. Gu Xingyin answered his question with silence. Radel was a little unwilling. When did you start? I've been by your side for 5 years. In terms of time, I'm afraid I'm earlier than you. A low and cold voice came from behind. Lin Zhe walked out of the shadows around the corner. He didn't know how much of their conversation he had heard. We knew each other before Zhanhuan went abroad. The two men faced each other for the first time. Radel didn't want to be outdone. So what if you knew Zhong before me? I've known her for 5 years and I've never heard her mention that she had a boyfriend. Lin Zhe didn't hold back. This is between the two of us. No matter what happens between Zhanhuan and me, it has nothing to do with an outsider like you. Not in front of Gu Xingyin, but in front of anyone. Lin Zhe's IQ was online. Although Lin Zhe was arguing with Radel, his eyes were bright. Looking carefully, there was even a flash of joy in them. How could he not be happy? Although Zhanhuan hadn't said it to him personally, she had admitted in front of another man, a man who was pursuing her, that the person she liked was him. Radel was speechless by Lin Zhe's words. He turned his head to look at Gu Xingyin. At this time, the key to the decision was undoubtedly Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin glanced at Radel. At this time, she could only make one choice. Radel, leave first. I have something to say to him. Radel's beautiful blue eyes dimmed. He took a deep look at Gu Xingyin and asked, Zhong, do I really have no chance at all? Gu Xingyin looked at him. Radel, my meaning has always been clear. You are a very good friend. He could only be a very good friend. Radel suddenly laughed and shrugged his shoulders. Well, Chong, I wish you happiness. Gu Xingyin also smiled. Thank you. Radel left in a carefree manner. However, when he reached a place where the two of them could no longer be seen, he stopped and leaned against the wall. It was still a little uncomfortable. He thought. For the first time in his life, he wanted to start a serious relationship. But it ended before it even started. Only Gu Xingyin and Lin Zhe were left. Zhan Huan. Lin Zhe called out to Gu Xingyin. His eyes were sparkling, which reminded Gu Xingyin of a child who had received his favorite candy, although it was somewhat inappropriate to use candy as an analogy for Linza. Let's find a place to talk. Gu Xingyin glanced at the hall, which was not hidden at all. If someone were to eavesdrop on them, it would be very interesting for tomorrow's newspaper. The two of them chose a place nearby. Anyone could tell that Lin Zhe was in a good mood. Although there was no smile on his face, the aura around him was extremely gentle. If Secretary Wang saw him here, he would definitely suspect that there was something wrong with his boss. Zhan Huan, I'm very happy now. Gu Xingyin glanced at him. What's there to be happy about? Lin Zhe laughed. He rarely smiled. Although it was a little strange to use the word stunning to describe a man, Gu Xingyin had to admit that he was indeed stunned by him. Clang! Her thoughts were interrupted. She looked up and met the waiter's apologetic gaze. I'm sorry, I'll get you a new cup right away. There was obviously a drink spilled on her tray. Chapter 1135. The waiter's face was red. Gu Xingyin saw this and could only sigh that beauty was misleading. Lin Zhe didn't seem to feel anything. He just looked at Gu Xingyin without blinking. I heard what you said. You also said that you didn't like me. Lin Zhe said softly, and his tone seemed to be a little coquettish. Gu Xingyin raised her eyebrows. Don't put a label on me. I never said that I didn't like you. Lin Zhe's expression became happy. It seemed that all his emotions were in the hands of Gu Xingyin. One sentence made him smile, and the other made him silent. Sir, madam, your drinks. A soft voice broke the atmosphere between the two. It was still the waiter from before. Her expression had returned to normal at this moment, but Gu Xingyin still saw that her eyes stayed on Lin Zhe for a moment before she got up and left. The waiter left, and there were only two people left in this small space again. Lin Zhe suddenly had an epiphany. He understood Gu Xingyin's hidden words, I like you. But just because I like you doesn't mean that I'm willing to be with you. He asked directly, then Zhan Huan, what do you want me to do for you to accept my pursuit and become my lover, my wife, and the mistress of the Lin family? Gu Xingyin's eyebrows didn't move. Do you need me to teach you how to please a girl? This was the first time the two of them sat together calmly and talked after 5 years. After that, Lin Zhe sent Gu Xingyin home as he wished. After getting Gu Xingyin's approval, Lin Zhe finally stopped restraining himself and began to pursue Gu Xingyin openly. Everything seemed to have been turned upside down. 5 years ago, Gu Xingyin pursued Lin Zhe, but Lin Zhe was always so cold. 5 years later, the roles were reversed. Lin Zhe began to follow Gu Xingyin around, and now it was Gu Xingyin's turn to ignore her. Both of them were not nameless people. News of the two of them spread quickly. Of course, the news was that the head of the Lin family, Lin Zhe, was crazy about the famous designer Zhong Zhanghuan. Basically, wherever Zhong Zhanghuan appeared, the general manager of Lin Group would be there. There were even some people who didn't have the means to see Lin Zhe. They specifically researched Zhong Zhanghuan's schedule and blocked Lin Zhe at some fashion industry gatherings. Someone really did succeed, and the romance between the two of them spread even further. The first person to call was Song Tao. "I say, Linza, you're not being honest. I've been giving you advice for so long. You actually didn't tell me that you've made such great progress." Lin Zhe replied in a good mood, "I'm going to tell you after I succeed. I'm still working hard." Song Tao roughly understood what was going on. He said, "All right. I'll be waiting for your good news. When the time comes, don't forget this meal." The next to know the news were some of his former high school classmates. After all, there were many rich people among his high school classmates. Now, there were also many people in the business world. Back then, the matter between Zhong Zhanghuan and Lin Zhe was a well-known matter in school. After graduation, Zhong Zhanghuan went abroad, and the entanglement between the two of them ended without any results. Many people thought of Ho Hai and secretly sighed. Now, Lin Zhe didn't keep a low profile when pursuing Gu Xingyin. He almost wanted everyone to know that he was pursuing Zhong Zhanghuan. Chapter 1136. Gu Xingyin had just finished an appointment with a brand when she received a message. When she was abroad for a few years, she had basically cut off all contact with her former high school classmates. After she came back, an active member of her former class somehow got her contact information and pulled her into a group chat. It was filled with her former classmates from grade 12, class 3. The message was from Cici. "Zhan Huan, the class has decided to organize a class reunion. It's the day after tomorrow. Do you have time to come?" Gu Xingyin thought for a moment. She didn't seem to have anything to do. She replied to Cici, "I don't have anything to do. I can go. Send me the time and location." Gu Xingyin arrived at the hotel on the day of the reunion. When she opened the door to the private room, there were already more than 20 people sitting inside. Gu Xingyin looked at them one by one. 5 years was enough to change a person completely. Other than a few people who left a deep impression on her, most of the faces were unfamiliar. "Zhan Huan." A surprised voice sounded. Gu Xingyin turned around. A girl wearing an off-shoulder sweater with her hair tied up in a bun was looking at her with a smile. She looked at this somewhat familiar face and took a second to react. "Cici." Cici laughed. "It's rare that our great designer still remembers me." Many people came over to greet Gu Xingyin. Cici was the most familiar with her and sat next to her. Gu Xingyin looked around and asked, "Why don't I see Changru?" Cici laughed. "I remember that you two had the worst relationship in high school. Why do you still remember her now? Could this be the legendary deep hatred, deep love?" Gu Xingyin laughed as well. "I'm just a little curious." Cici said, "I heard that Changru will come too, but she might be a little late." Just as she finished speaking, the door to the private room was pushed open again. The elegantly dressed woman who came in, wasn't that Changru? Even though they hadn't seen each other for 5 years, Changru's popularity was still as high as ever. Most of the students in the class remembered this class monitor and went up to greet her. Changru also saw Gu Xingyin. After exchanging pleasantries with the people around her, she walked towards Gu Xingyin. "Long time no see." Changru smiled at Gu Xingyin. Cici pointed at the seat beside her and gestured for Changru to sit down. "Zhan Huan was just asking why you weren't here, and now you're here." Changru smiled at Gu Xingyin in surprise. "Zhan Huan has been thinking about me for so long. It seems like you really hated me in high school." Her words were mostly teasing, and she couldn't help but laugh as she spoke. "By the way, I heard that you are still struggling with Linza." Changru asked as he looked at Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin couldn't help but laugh. What do you mean by entangled? Chang-Ru rolled his eyes. I think you have a bad temper. How can you be so muddle-headed when it comes to Linza? If it were me, I would have given up long ago after pursuing him for less than 2 years. Cece couldn't help but interrupt. Our Jean Huan isn't the one pursuing someone now. Everyone knows that Linza is pursuing our Jean Huan. Chang-Ru had been overseas on a business trip recently, so she was a little uninformed. Hearing this, she was very interested. Oh. What's the situation? Cece then chattered on about the matter to Chang-Ru one way or another. Gu Xingyin couldn't help but laugh as she listened. This version of the story was really full of twists and turns. It was a good show. If the male and female leads in this story weren't her and Linza, she really wouldn't have known that this story was about her. Chapter 1137. Things like you love me, I love you, but we can't be together, family opposition, and all kinds of melodramatic scenes appeared in the novel. Cece was in the middle of her story and was unhappy to be interrupted. After glaring at Gu Xingyin, she realized that this was the main character and felt embarrassed. Jean Huan, ha. Gu Xingyin didn't think it was a big deal. She said, alright, do you really think you're reading a romance novel? Why would there be so many twists and turns? The two of us did have a small misunderstanding back then. Seeing that Cece and Chang-Ru were looking over with interest, Gu Xingyin smiled mysteriously. However, this is a secret between the two of us. Cece looked at Gu Xingyin resentfully. Jean Huan must have done it on purpose to take revenge on her for spreading gossip about him. That was why he didn't tell her. Then what's the situation between you two now? Chang-Ru couldn't help but ask. She looked at Gu Xingyin. She was completely different from when she was in high school. But one thing hadn't changed. Zhong Zhanghuan was a woman who could easily move people's hearts. Although she already had a lover who was ready to spend the rest of her life with her, Chang-Ru still paid more attention to Zhong Zhanghuan, the first person she fell in love with in her life. Isn't that the situation? Gu Xingyin didn't want to say much about the two of them. Cece interrupted, the two of them. Rumor has it that Lin Zhe is pursuing Jean Huan, but Jean Huan didn't agree. Chang-Ru looked at Gu Xingyin when she heard this. Gu Xingyin didn't comment on Cece's words. This also proved that what Cece said wasn't groundless. Chang-Ru suddenly clapped and laughed. That's good. Jean Huan, don't agree so easily. Let Lin Zhe have a taste of what it's like to pursue someone bitterly. You have to know that I didn't like him for a long time back then. Pfft. Cece couldn't help but laugh. She looked at Chang-Ru. I didn't expect you to be such a class monitor. At that time, I really hoped that Jean Huan and Lin Zhe could be together. As the three of them chatted, the class was slowly filled up. The class reunion after graduation was nothing more than a competition of career and love. Now, most of the people in the class were still young. Many of them had just graduated from university for 1 or 2 years and had just started their careers. There were also many who got married relatively early. The earliest ones even had a child, which made all the single dogs envious. The man, who had recently married a rich girl, became the target of the group of boys in the class and directly poured alcohol on the table. After dinner, someone suggested that they go to a nearby KTV to have some fun. Everyone agreed since they had nothing to do. Walking out of the hotel, Gu Xingyin couldn't help but shiver when the night wind blew. A familiar car stopped in front of her. The car door opened and Lin Zhe's figure appeared in front of everyone. Yo! Our school hunk is here. A few of them were drunk and didn't care about what they said. Some people silently shut their mouths when they saw Lin Zhe's meticulous outfit and the car he drove. Why are you here? Gu Xingyin asked. I heard from Song Tao that your class seems to be having a party, so I came to take a look. Oh. Gu Xingyin replied indifferently. Are you guys preparing? Lin Zhe looked at them. They seemed to be having an event. We're going to sing. Lin Zhe, do you want to come with us? Cece said quickly. But she regretted it as soon as she said it. Chapter 1138. Looking at Lin Zhe's appearance, he was a busy man. Also, it wasn't appropriate for him to go karaoke with them in such formal attire, right? Most importantly, with Lin Zhe's personality, would he refuse, or would he refuse, or would he refuse? But what Cece didn't expect was that Lin Zhe would actually say yes. Cece looked at him in shock. Did she hear wrongly? Lin Zhe told everyone to wait for a moment. Then, everyone watched as his figure crossed the road and entered a branded women's clothing store. Cece silently looked at the brand and thought for a moment. Was half a year's salary enough to buy such a piece of clothing? Wait. Why did Lin Zhe go to a women's clothing store? She suddenly remembered that Zhan Huan seemed to have said something about it being cold at night. It couldn't be. Cece's eyes widened. Soon, Lin Zhe's figure came out of the store with a shopping bag in his hand. Sorry for making you wait. Lin Zhe nodded to everyone. Then, he opened the bag in his hand and took out the clothes inside. It's cold at night. Be careful not to catch a cold. He gently put the jacket in his hand on Gu Xingyin. I didn't have time to choose carefully. Just wear it. Lin Zhe's voice seemed a little apologetic. Everyone watching the whole process, this public display of affection caught them off guard. Cece blinked her eyes and screamed in her heart, just wear it. Just wear it. Evil capitalist. Every time I pass by, I can only look at the clothes that I dream of buying, but I'm still so reluctant to wear them in your mouth. There's no harm without comparison. Gu Xingyin was about to speak when Lin Zhe realized her intentions. His attitude changed instantly and he immediately said with some grievance, don't mention money to me. You said that I can pursue you. Then have you heard of suitors charging money for gifts? Gu Xingyin. Who taught him that? It's only been a few days, and his skin has become so thick. Cece couldn't stand it anymore. Let's go to the KTV next door. Lin Zhe looked up. That's the Lin Corporation's business. It's fate that everyone chose this one. It's my treat today. Everyone, play as you please. The atmosphere of the crowd behind him immediately became lively. After watching for a while, Changru stood beside Cece and sighed. I finally believe that every dog has its day. Just from this short period of time, one could see how the two of them usually interacted with each other. As she thought about it, she began to gloat again. Serves you right, Linza. Back then, Zhan Huan liked you so much, but he didn't know how to cherish you. Looking at Zhan Huan's expression, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that he was deliberately tormenting Linza. Lin Zhe said that he wanted to play with everyone, but with him around, most people couldn't let go. He probably knew this as well, so he only stayed for a while before leaving. Only then did the people in the private room become lively. A few girls sat beside Gu Xingyin and chatted with her, asking about Lin Zhe. Gu Xingyin slammed the cup in her hand on the glass coffee table and looked at them with a faint smile. What do you want to know? Wouldn't it be faster to ask him directly? Those girls' expressions turned ugly after being rebutted so rudely by her. One of them even muttered, "What are you so smug about? Aren't you just relying on the fact that you shamelessly pursued him for 2 years in high school and made the first move?" Chapter 1139. Before Gu Xingyin could say anything, Cece exploded. What are you guys talking about? You're shamelessly coveting Lin Zhe, and now you're playing the blame game. Who's the shameless one? Changru also spoke, but she wasn't as direct as Cece. Striking first to gain the upper hand is also her ability. If you have the ability, can you also make such a man only have eyes for you? If you don't have the ability, then shut up. The girl had a bad temper and started arguing with the two of them on the spot. The commotion from this corner quickly attracted the attention of the other students. The boy who was singing also turned off the microphone and music and came over to ask what was going on. Cece was quick to speak and told them what had happened in a few words. For a moment, many people looked at the girls with subtle expressions. In this world, the world laughed at the poor and not at the prostitutes. It wasn't a new thing for girls to want to hook up with a rich husband and marry into a wealthy family. However, it was a little too much for these people to poach someone in front of the real deal, not to mention that they were all high school classmates. Seeing that everyone didn't seem to be on her side, the girl couldn't help but say loudly, "What? Did I say something wrong? Everyone knows that Zhong Zhanghuan isn't Lin Zhe's girlfriend yet. What kind of person am I trying to poach? If Zhong Zhanghuan doesn't like someone, why can't others woo her? Also, what did I say wrong? If Zhong Zhanghuan hadn't chased after Lin Zhe for 2 years, would he still be obsessed with her? And all of you, aren't you just trying to avoid harm? If Zhong Zhanghuan wasn't the person Lin Zhe liked today, would all of you still try to curry favor with her and speak up for her?" The room was silent, and only the girl's shrill voice could be heard echoing in the room. After the girl finished speaking, she saw that no one spoke and was a little smug. "What, I hit the nail on the head and you can't refute it? You're thinking too much." The man who organized this event stood up. He looked at the girl with disdain. "It's not that everyone can't refute it, but they're stunned by your broken worldview." This man was also a rich second-generation heir. He was the one who organized this gathering. Zhan Huan isn't Lin Zhe's girlfriend because Zhan Huan never accepted Lin Zhe's confession. If you wanted to pursue Lin Zhe, no one would say anything about it. But out of so many people, you had to ask Zhan Huan. Even if you are a girl, I can only say that your behavior is indeed shameless. The girl's face paled. The man didn't stop talking because of that. Neither of us is trying to please the other. We don't belong to the same circle, and we don't have a strong relationship with each other. Student, don't think that everyone is as snobbish as you. Lastly, don't you know Zhan Huan's identity? Someone who won the ADE Best New Designer Award. Do you know who the designers who won this award are now? They are all targets that all the major luxury brands are fighting to hire. Not to mention the future, even now, if Zhan Huan casually accepts an appointment with any brand, the remuneration will start from 7 figures. He looked at the girl's widening eyes and smiled evilly. By the way, you might not understand such a high-end thing. Then you should have heard of the Zhong Group, right? Zhan Huan is the only heir of the Zhong Group. He placed extra emphasis on the word only. Chapter 1140. Not to mention the girl who had spoken earlier, even the other students in the class didn't know Zhong Zhanghuan's true identity. Zhong Zhanghuan had never talked about her family background. Although she was dressed fashionably in high school, they guessed that her family background wasn't bad. However, her family background wasn't bad. Compared to the heir of the Zhong Corporation, it was like heaven and earth. Just as the male student who had organized the party had said, most of the students present had never been in contact with the fashion industry. They didn't know what the ADE Design Award was, but they didn't know what it was exactly. However, the Zhong Corporation was different. It was one of the leading enterprises in the city and could be ranked in the top 10 in the entire province. It went without saying what it meant to be the only heir of such a corporation. Those students who had thought that Zhong Zhanghuan was lucky to have hooked up with a diamond tycoon like Lin Zhe had completely changed their minds. Why would Zhong Zhanghuan need to find a tycoon? She herself was a huge gold mine. When the girl heard this, her face turned pale. She looked at Gu Xingyin in disbelief. People like her couldn't understand why someone with such good conditions would keep such a low profile. There was another reason why she was so afraid. She was now working in a subsidiary company of the Zhong Corporation. The employees of the Zhong Corporation had always been treated very well. This girl had put in a lot of effort to get into that company. Zhong Zhanghuan should be the boss of her boss's boss. As the young master of the main company, if Zhong Zhanghuan wanted her to leave, it would be a piece of cake. The more the girl thought about it, the paler her face became. She didn't know what terrible things she was thinking about, but before anyone could say anything, she actually burst into tears. Gu Xingyin, the male student who spoke, the onlookers, the girl cried as she said to Gu Xingyin, "I'm sorry, Miss Zhong. I didn't know your identity. I hope you can forgive me for offending you." The door of the private room opened with a click, diverting everyone's attention. Lin Zhe met everyone's gaze with a strange expression. She saw Gu Xingyin standing in front of a crying girl. She thought something had happened to her, so she hurried to her side. "Are you okay? What's wrong? What happened?" As for the girl who was still crying, Lin Zhe didn't even look at her. Gu Xingyin shook her head. "Nothing." She said to the girl, "You should apologize to Zhong Zhanghuan, not the young lady of the Zhong group." The girl's face turned pale and she continued to cry. Gu Xingyin could tell what she was thinking just by looking at her expression. "Don't cry. I didn't say I was going to do anything to you. It's a rare class reunion. Don't ruin everyone's mood," she said with a frown. The girl responded in a low voice. Seizing the opportunity, he played the music again. "Let's not talk about anything else today. We're only in charge of having fun." Although Gu Xingyin said that, the girl couldn't sit still. She only excused herself to go to the bathroom and left when no one was looking. 8 p.m. This world will end tomorrow. Thank you everyone for giving Gigi your votes. You're so awesome. You've already broken the weekly recommendation vote record since Gigi started writing. Oh carrot, love you all. 3, joy. There are more than 1,000 votes left on the last day. Continue to throw in your votes and don't stop. Mua. Good night everyone. Chapter 1141. Lin Zhe sat in the private room and accompanied her for a while. Everyone watched as he busied himself with drinks, fruits, and things for Gu Xingyin. Only when he was facing Gu Xingyin did he not look like a cold general manager at all. Instead, he was a man who wholeheartedly tried to please his girlfriend. Many girls were extremely envious of Gu Xingyin. Look at her boyfriend. He was handsome, rich, and most importantly, he was so good to her. But on second thought, they didn't have Zhong Zhanghuan's persistence in giving up everything to pursue a man. They didn't have Zhong Zhanghuan's talent in design. They didn't have her status as the only heir of the Zhong Corporation. Thinking about it this way, since they were so much worse than him, what right did they have to be jealous of him? Perhaps it was because Lin Zhe's affections were too obvious that even Cici, who was obviously on Gu Xingyin's side at the beginning, wavered. When they left, Cici even tugged at Gu Xingyin and said that there weren't many men who could treat their girlfriends as well as Lin Zhe, not to mention that he was so well off. Cici said, "Zhanghuan, don't throw a tantrum or anything. That's enough. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good if his heart really turned cold." Gu Xingyin only listened and didn't say anything. How long had it been since Lin Zhe? It hadn't even been a month, and she was afraid that his heart would turn cold. Back then, she had pursued him for 2 whole years. Lin Zhe's devotion to her was called affection. Was Zhong Zhanghuan's 2 years really so worthless? When Chan Ru left, she specially came to look for Gu Xingyin. Don't agree to him too easily, Zhanghuan. Men would never cherish things that were too easy to obtain. You've done so much for him in those 2 years and put on airs. Zhanghuan, you're a precious girl. You have to be reserved. Take yourself seriously. That's more important than anything else. Just based on these 2 sentences, Gu Xingyin felt that this girl could be befriended. As expected, Gu Xingyin thought to herself, Chang Ru is still very rational when she's normal. He did not know why she was so paranoid in the original plot. At the entrance of the first floor, Gu Xingyin saw a car stop in front of Chang Ru. Then, a very beautiful Caucasian girl got out of the car. She took the bag from Chang Ru and the two of them kissed face to face before Chang Ru got into the car. Gu Xingyin watched the car drive away. None of the students present felt that the two of them were abnormal. There was even a classmate who sighed with emotion. The class leader's relationship with her roommate is really good. I heard that her roommate is her boss who was transferred from the head office. TSK, why can't I find such a good roommate? Gu Xingyin smiled and said nothing. She said goodbye to everyone, rejected Lin Zhe's request to send her home, and drove home by herself. Half a year passed. Lin Zhe still couldn't catch up to Zhong Zhanghuan. However, everyone in the city's business circle knew that the general manager of the Lin Corporation was madly infatuated with the eldest daughter of the Zhong family, the famous designer in the country, Miss Zhong Zhanghuan. The general manager of the Lin Corporation, Lin Zhe, gave everyone the impression that he was like a piece of ice that could not be heated. Only when he pursued Zhong Zhanghuan did he seem like a passionate fire. However, the eldest daughter of the Zhong family was like a high and mighty flower. Even someone like the general manager of the Lin Corporation could not win the heart of a beauty. There were even busybodies who bet on whether the general manager of the Lin Corporation could win the beauty's heart in the end. If he could, how long would it take? Chapter 1142. Zhong Zhanghuan stayed in China for more than half a year. After that, she began to fly around the world. Sometimes, she had to attend fashion shows in several different countries within a month. Sometimes, she would stay in a remote town in a small country for half a year to find inspiration. Even Father Zhong often didn't see his daughter for months or even half a year. But Lin Zhe was different. Basically, as long as he had time, or if he didn't have time, he would try his best to shorten the time and deal with everything in one go. Then, he would follow Gu Xingyin around the world. Gu Xingyin lived in a beautiful and remote town in the Western Hemisphere. He would stay there for a week. Then, under Secretary Wang's desperate calls, he would fly back to China to deal with the company's affairs. He would definitely go to Gu Xingyin's fashion shows. When the reporters took photos of the guests, they could always take photos of the low-key man sitting in the guest seats, who was no worse than any male model. Over time, even the Western media knew that there was a mysterious handsome man from the East who had been silently pursuing the famous designer Miss Zhong Zhanghuan. There were even newspapers that recorded this. The media began to consciously search for a certain figure in every fashion show where Gu Xingyin was present. The fashion industry not only advocated fashion and platinum, but also liked romance. And Lin Zhe's approach was undoubtedly the most romantic. I will spend all the time I can spare to accompany you for the rest of my life. Lin Zhe didn't expect that he would gain a large number of fans. Even under Gu Xingyin's social media account, fans began to congratulate the two of them on their relationship. When Gu Xingyin saw this, she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But she also didn't expect that Lin Zhe, who was like a block of wood, would learn such a romantic thing without a teacher. With the rise of fame, Gu Xingyin also began to become busier and busier. And the busier she was, the faster time would pass. A year passed in the blink of an eye. Gu Xingyin was still flying around the world, and Lin Zhe was still following her everywhere. Secretary Wang now knew why his boss paid so much attention to the fashion industry. Not only Secretary Wang, but all the employees of Lin Group knew that their iceberg-like handsome general manager had been chasing Zhong Zhanghuan for 2 years. Seeing the general manager's posture of pursuing someone, many people sighed. Their general manager wasn't an iceberg. He was clearly a dormant volcano. He was so unromantic in the past, but he hadn't met the person who made him willing to be enlightened. The general manager's romantic attitude instantly killed a group of self-proclaimed romantic scums. However, the future general manager's wife was indeed hard-hearted. Many girls expressed that if there was a perfect man as handsome and rich as the general manager pursuing them, they estimated that they could only be reserved for a week at most. No, 3 days at most, no more than that. Was the general manager's wife's sexual orientation? People's Day Zhanghuan started to persuade her. Father Zhong had also called her. Zhanghuan, father has been watching Linza for more than a year. Linza is indeed sincere to you. No matter how angry you are, you should be appeased. I see that you have feelings for him. That's enough. A father knew his daughter best. Father Zhanghuan's father had seen through Gu Xingyin's thoughts. Chapter 1143. The one who made Gu Xingyin the most speechless was Ladle. This guy actually came over to look for her once. Zhong, I think the man who's pursuing you is really not bad. I can't compare to him. If you choose another man in the future, I won't be convinced. But if it's him, I'm convinced. Had he even conquered his love rival? The annual ADE selection had already begun. After 3 months of seclusion, Gu Xingyin finally submitted her work at an International Fashion Week show. The hall was filled with cheers. Then, there was waiting. After 2 months of waiting, all the designers were waiting for the award that symbolized the highest pursuit of the fashion world. As if he knew how nervous and confused she was, Lin Zhe even tried his best to reduce his rest time and forcefully gave himself a month to wait with her. Lin Zhe's mother, the strong madam, was initially dissatisfied with Gu Xingyin. In her opinion, a daughter-in-law who had too much influence on her son wasn't a good thing for the Lin family and Lin Zhe. However, Lin Zhe, who had always been filial, was uncharacteristically insistent on this matter. Then, Lin Zhe used 2 years to change his mother's mind. Mother Lin's only hope now was that Miss Zhong, who was loved to the bone by her son, could turn around and look at Lin Zhe, who had been chasing after her. She hoped that she could open her heart and accept Lin Zhe. The one who doted on her child the most was always the mother. Mrs. Lin couldn't bear to see Lin Zhe working so hard. During this month, Lin Zhe accompanied Gu Xingyin. The two of them abandoned all work and things to tour various places. Finally, it was the most important day for Gu Xingyin. The final results of the ADE selection were announced. One by one, the awards were announced until the final moment. The winner of this year's AFE Best Designer Award is, congratulations to the mysterious designer from the East, Miss Zhong Zhanghuan, and her work, Butterfly Wings. A light descended from the sky and landed on Gu Xingyin. The audience applauded thunderously, congratulating the young designer. Gu Xingyin went up to the podium. Beside her stood a female supermodel wearing her design, Butterfly Wings. I'm very happy to receive this award. Thank you. After a long string of thanks, Gu Xingyin's voice suddenly paused. She suddenly smiled. Other than that, I want to thank someone. I'm grateful to him for watching every fashion show with me. I'm grateful to him for being by my side when I'm happy, sad, inspired, or upset. Many people who knew the story between her and Lin Zhe were already exclaiming softly. Lin Zhe held his breath at that moment. His heart was beating so fast that he couldn't hear the noise around him. In his world, there was only the woman standing on the podium smiling as she spoke. In his ears, there was only her sweet voice. All of this, in front of everyone, in front of the media, I want to say to him. She looked in the direction of Lin Zhe. Linza, thank you. Also, I love you. The lights shone in Lin Zhe's direction, and his figure appeared on the big screen. Under the witness of all the guests, the handsome Oriental man had a smile on his face, and his eyes were as warm as spring water in March. I love you too, Zhanghuan. Chapter 1144. No one knew that Lin Zhe was holding on and smiling like that in front of everyone. The moment the lights and cameras moved away from him, he couldn't hold it in. His eyes turned red and tears fell. He was really happy. Lin Zhe had never been as happy as he was at this moment. He thought that if he could get Zhang Huan's words, it would be worth it even if he immediately jumped down from the 24th floor of the award ceremony. In China, Mr. Zhong and Mrs. Lin, who were paying attention to their daughter and son's movements, also saw this scene on the live broadcast. Father Zhong was still fine. He heaved a sigh of relief. Mrs. Lin, on the other hand, cried on the spot. His son, Lin Zhe, had finally waited for this day. The others, however, saw the news in the headlines the next day. Oriental designer becomes the big winner of ADE, confession at the award ceremony. Career and love double harvest. ADE's best designer tells you what it means to be a winner in life. Headlines like this filled almost all the fashion magazines' headlines the next day. As soon as Gu Xingyin stepped down from the stage, Lin Zhe, who was full of excitement, hugged her in his arms. Until the end of the award ceremony, the two of them didn't let go of each other's hands. After the two of them returned to China, they moved quickly. Lin Zhe called back to prepare for the wedding almost as soon as he became a full-time employee. The day after the two of them returned to the hotel, he personally bought a ring and proposed to Gu Xingyin. "Why are you in such a hurry?" Gu Xingyin was surprised. Lin Zhe took her hand and placed it on his chest. "Because it's filled with agitation and uneasiness. Everything that's happened so far feels too unreal. I can only feel at ease if I lock you firmly by my side." He had never been stingy with telling the truth to Gu Xingyin. Needless to say, she knew what he was referring to. What else could Gu Xingyin say? She had even confessed. If she rejected the proposal, it would be pretentious. Everyone was stunned by the speed of the two men's movements. They had just officially announced that they were together for less than a month, and now they were announcing their marriage. Everyone was sighing. Lin Zhe was indeed fast. When someone mocked Lin Zhe because of this, he didn't feel embarrassed at all. Instead, he nodded seriously. "Yes, I'm not in a hurry. Zhang Huan is so good. If I don't label her as Madame Linza, I will never be at ease. What if someone covets her?" The person who asked the question. "Fuck you, who told you to run your mouth? Serves him right for eating a mouthful of dog food." The parents of the two families were very satisfied. After all, the two of them were not young anymore. It was just right for them to get married. As a result, Zhong Zhanghuan was finally crowned as Mrs. Lin by Linza at the age of 26. This year, all the employees of Lin Corporation received double their year-end bonuses. All the employees were secretly giving their blessings, hoping that the general manager's wife would get pregnant soon. If the young master was born and the general manager was happy, it was not impossible for the bonus to be doubled. He had thought that since the general manager of the Lin Corporation had pursued his wife so crazily before they got married, he would restrain himself a little after they got married. That was what most people thought. After all, he was a man. Everyone knew that. But those people were too naive. Because after the two of them got married, Lin Zhe became even more clingy to his wife. Moreover, Lin Zhe even found the most dignified reason for himself: "I'm clingy to my own wife." Do you have a problem with that? If you have a problem with that, go find one yourself. Chapter 1145. Before the two of them had officially established their relationship, Lin Zhe had been known as a crazy pursuer. Everyone in the company knew that he could deal with the company's affairs at an unimaginable speed and then spare as much time as possible to fly around the world with Zhong Zhanghuan. After Zhong Zhanghuan became Mrs. Lin, this situation didn't change at all. Zhong Zhanghuan was still flying all over the world. Her profession meant that she couldn't stay quietly at home like an ordinary housewife and take care of her husband and children. As for Lin Zhe, as long as he had time, he would fly around the world with her. Compared to his persistent pursuit in the past, he was much more open and aboveboard now. In the past, he could only sit quietly at the fan seats like everyone else and watch the performances of the models like an ordinary fan. He was always so far away from the designer seat. But it was different now. As long as he had time to attend a fashion show, Lin Zhe could sit on his wife's body openly. No matter how many times the camera swept over the two of them, they could see the two of them smiling and whispering intimately together. Even their hands were tightly held together. Another 5 years passed. When Zhong Zhanghuan won the second ADE Design Award in her life, she announced a piece of news that made countless people happy. Their family would soon welcome a new member. At the same time, she also said that all work announcements would be suspended and she would focus on taking care of the baby. Among all the people who heard the news, Lin Zhe was the happiest. He felt that the ADE selection competition was the lucky star of his life. The first time he participated in this competition, he got the wife he loved the most in his life. The second time he participated in this competition, he was about to welcome the baby of his family. God was so kind to him. When Zhong Zhanghuan returned to China, she was treated like a princess from two families. Especially Lin Mu. Ever since her son took charge of the Lin Corporation, Lin Mu felt that she had no goals in life. So she began to focus on traveling, beauty, fitness and other activities that she had wanted to do before but didn't have time for. She didn't return home for almost a month, leaving enough space for her son and daughter-in-law. But when she heard that her daughter-in-law was pregnant, Lin Mu, who was skiing in the northern hemisphere, flew straight home. In fact, Gu Xingyin was not nervous about giving birth. After all, she had experienced it several times. Moreover, the system could block her pain, so she did not feel uncomfortable. However, they couldn't resist the anticipation and nervousness of the parents on both sides. In the end, Gu Xingyin herself became extremely cautious under the brainwashing. With everyone's blessings, Gu Xingyin safely gave birth to their first child, the little princess of the Lin family, Lini. Gu Xingyin and Lin Zhe, the couple who had just become parents, were fine. Lin Zhe's mother, who wanted a granddaughter, was so happy that she wanted to fly. What, you don't like your daughter? Gu Xingyin looked at Lin Zhe and raised her eyebrows. The other party didn't seem that happy. Lin Zhe shook his head and gently leaned his head against her side. How could I not like the child you gave birth to? I just think that giving birth to a child is too torturous. You've worked so hard. Gu Xingyin laughed. She turned her face and kissed the man on the face. For you, I am willing. Chapter 1146. Lin Zhe and Gu Xingyin had been married for many years, and he had chased after Gu Xingyin for many years. Until later, when both of them were old, Gu Xingyin finally stopped. She put down her work and wholeheartedly accompanied her family. Lin Zhe had long since handed over the family business to his children. The two old married couples often held hands and leisurely wandered around every beautiful place in this world. Their footsteps were very slow, but their steps were very steady. Because they both knew that there would always be someone by their side holding their hand. The two of them, no one would leave the other behind. Another life of happiness and good health. Gu Xingyin returned to the space and did not stop at all. After receiving the gift of the world, she immediately began to teleport to another world. This time, she opened her eyes amidst a faint fragrance. System, begin to transfer memories. Gu Xingyin said and began to look at her surroundings. This was a very spacious hall. Although it was called a hall, there was nothing in the hall. Because there was nothing, the originally spacious hall seemed even more empty. The only decorations in the hall were the layers of red gauze curtains that seemed to have appeared out of thin air. Under the effect of the faint cold wind from who knows where, they fluttered. And in the center of those red gauze curtains was the big bed where Gu Xingyin was. Gu Xingyin sat up. At the same time, the system's plot had been transmitted. Ghost King Lan Ling. This was the identity of this body. Ghost King Lan Ling had been Ghost King Lan Ling since she had memories. She did not know what her identity was when she was alive, nor did she know why she had become a ghost. Because she was the most powerful ghost god in this area. This place was called Lan Ling in the distant past, so she was called Ghost King Lan Ling. Ghost King Lan Ling's name was Lan Ling. Ghost King Lan Ling did not like crowds and did not eat strangers. Compared to a ghost, she was more like a Taoist true god with no desires. The only thing Lan Ling Ghost King was interested in was her past life. As a ghost without memories, no matter how powerful she was, she would not be satisfied. Whether it was a human or a ghost, the higher one stood at the top, the more they could not tolerate too many unknown things. This was the case for Ghost King Lan Ling. According to the original plot, Gu Xingyin saw Ghost King Lan Ling's future. Her existence restrained the ghosts and monsters in this place. Lan Ling Ghost King didn't like blood because she didn't think it was beautiful, so none of the ghosts in this place dared to kill people. There was once a self-proclaimed powerful ghost that tried to challenge the authority of Ghost King Lan Ling, but the result was death. Ghosts were originally spiritual bodies produced by souls that did not enter the cycle of reincarnation after death. Therefore, once they died, they would truly disappear from the 6 paths of reincarnation. He was reduced to ashes. After a few thunderous oppressions, no one in the entire Lan Ling region dared to challenge the rules set by the Lan Ling Ghost Lord. And she even gained the attention of the Divine Court because of her meritorious management. Ghost King Lan Ling received a decree from the Divine Court and changed from Ghost King Lan Ling to Ghost God Lan Ling. Because of her powerful strength, she was conferred the title of Marquis Lan Ling. And she also successfully learned about her past and present life with the help of the Divine Court's 3-world mirror. Everything was logical, but a talented disciple named Jiang Ling had appeared in this world. Chapter 1147. Jiang Ling was a disciple of a Taoist sect in hell near Lan Ling. She was born with Heaven's Eye and was nurtured by the sect since she was young. She was taught how to kill demons and monsters. In fact, this was also the mission of countless Taoist sections. After all, there were very few friendly ghosts in Lan Ling. Most ghosts relied on absorbing the vitality of humans to maintain their bodies. There were even some evil ghosts that specialized in killing ordinary people. Generally speaking, in the eyes of humans, ghosts and monsters were synonymous with terror. Just like how humans hated ghosts, ghosts did not necessarily like humans that much. There were no Taoist sects in the vast Orchid Hill. The reason was simple, because the Lan Ling king did not like it. It was not that there were no sects that wanted to take over this place. In terms of feng shui, Lan Ling was a good place with rich spiritual energy. Whether it was cultivators, ghosts, or humans, it was suitable for them to live here. However, no matter which sect it was, they would definitely be obstructed if they wanted to settle down here. With the resistance of tens of thousands of ghosts in the entire Lan Ling area, even the strongest sect would not be able to take down this tough bone. Over time, the reputation of the Lan Ling Ghost King spread. Lan Ling, this hell, also became a place that Taoists would sigh about. Jiang Ling, because of her good talent, she had a fearless personality since she was young. Because she had lived in a sect since she was young, she could only see these few mountains. She could only hear her fellow disciples praising her outstanding talent and could not help but feel a little smug. When she was 16 years old, she secretly ran to Lan Ling while the sect masters were not paying attention. She thought that if she could capture the Lan Ling Ghost King, who made her master and the others look serious, wouldn't it be a great achievement? She was quite lucky and actually found the palace where the Lan Ling Ghost King was. However, How could a little girl who was still wet behind the ears be a match for the famous Lanling Ghost King? The Lanling Ghost King did not like to kill, so she teased Jiangling and chased her out of Lanling. Jiangling was not convinced because of this. After returning to the sect, the elders in the sect heard that she was fearless enough to provoke the Ghost King Lanling. They punished her severely and grounded her for 3 whole years. Jiangling, on the other hand, was provoked by Lanling Ghost King's teasing. She was no longer as absent-minded as she used to be. Instead, she began to work hard on her cultivation. 3 years later, she boasted that there was still a big gap between her and the Lanling Ghost King. Following that, she went into seclusion for another 3 years. A total of 9 years. Once again, she went to challenge Ghost King Lanling with her sword. She didn't want to hurt Lanling Ghost King. After all, Jiangling was no longer the little kid she was back then. She knew how to differentiate between good and evil, and also understood her own recklessness back then. If it was someone with a bad temper, he would have died long ago. She just wanted to wash away the humiliation of being teased by Ghost King Lanling. But accidents were always beyond human control. Lanling Ghost King had just passed the most severe 6 in 9 heavenly tribulation that even ghosts and gods had to go through. Although she had successfully passed the tribulation, she was already at the end of her rope. Jiangling did not know that the attack that she thought the other party would definitely be able to dodge landed on Lanling Ghost King without hesitation. Under Jiangling's incredulous gaze, Lanling Ghost King turned into a little blue firefly in front of her. From then on, there was no more Lanling Ghost King in this world. Chapter 1148. Gu Xingyin sighed. Ghost King Lanling's death was really unjust. She was supposed to get an edict from the divine court soon after she passed the 6 in 9 heavenly tribulation, but fate played tricks on her. Strictly speaking, Ling's death was not her fault. She didn't know that Ghost King Lanling was seriously injured and lost her strength. Ghost King Lanling also didn't expect that the little girl who was like an ant back then would grow up so quickly. It could only be said that fate played tricks on people. The protagonist's fate couldn't be cut off like this, so Gu Xingyin came to Ghost King Lanling, who hadn't started yet. Gu Xingyin looked around. Very good, this dark, ethereal and gloomy style was really ghostly. She reached out and pulled open the curtain in front of her. It seemed that someone invisible had lit up the whole hall, and the dark hall was instantly lit up. But this light was only equivalent to the light in front of the hall. A dark blue light flashed between Gu Xingyin, and there was a ripple in the space like water, and a mirror appeared in front of her. When Gu Xingyin saw Ghost King Lanling's appearance, he couldn't help but gasp in admiration. The woman in the mirror had a very white complexion. But it was different from the whiteness of human beings, and it was also different from the bluish white of ordinary ghosts. Her complexion was pale, as if she had never seen the sun, so pale that it was almost transparent. Raising her palm, Gu Xingyin could clearly see the light blue blood vessels on her slender wrist. But her eyebrows and eyes were very dark. Her eyebrows were as black as ink, and her eyes were pitch black. The contrast between black and white actually produced a kind of extreme beauty. The shape of her lips was very beautiful, undyed and vermilion, which were the only 3 red parts of her body. Red lips, red nail polish, and red clothes. He had ink-colored hair, ink-colored eyebrows, and ink-colored eyes. White skin. When the 3 contrasting colors were on the same person, it produced a very shocking effect. At this moment, she was sitting on the bed lazily, with a messy silky red brocade quilt under her, and her long black hair casually draped behind her. His entire person was like a colorful splash ink painting. Beautiful. This was the only way Gu Xingyin could describe Ghost King Lanling. If she was in the human world, she would be an enchantress who could bring calamity to the world. However, in the world of yin and yang, she was the ghost king Lan Ling, who was feared by countless ghosts. The yin-yang realm was a general term for the world where ghosts lived. With a flick of his finger, the mirror disappeared. Gu Xingyin got up and stepped on her embroidered shoes. The layers of red gauze curtains in front of her automatically parted, as if to guide her. System, draw skills. Alright, host. The system flashed with a white light. Gu Xingyin glanced at it. Getting close to nature. Fortunately, it wasn't too bad. There was no need for a ghost to get close to nature. However, it was still much better than using light magic. Gu Xingyin suddenly thought of something. System, do you know who the Phantom Lord Lan Ling was? The plot only mentioned that she saw her past life through the three-world mirror after being conferred the title of Principal God, but it didn't specifically mention it. The system replied, Host, you have to work hard on this yourself. The system can't help or inquire about anything that isn't mentioned in the plot. Gu Xingyin sneered, Alright, I understand. A soft voice came from outside the hall, Lord Lan Ling, do you need me to serve you? Chapter 1149. Gu Xingyin said slowly, Come in. Two female ghosts in white walked in. They were female ghosts because they appeared here, so they could only be female ghosts. As the two figures approached, Gu Xingyin saw their faces. She could not help but exclaim in her heart, even ghosts are so beautiful now. The woman in white on the left had her hair tied up loosely with a silver ribbon. She had a faint smile on her face and was extremely beautiful. The one on the right wore a pink dress and looked younger. Her face was bright and beautiful. She was naturally charming. The two female ghosts were the personal servants of Ghost King Lan Ling. The beautiful one was called Weiwei and the bright one was called Ah Jin. Both of them were holding spices and warm water in their hands. They must have been waiting outside for a long time. Gu Xingyin sat down lazily and allowed Weiwei to wipe his face with a soft towel that was soaked in water. Ah Jin used a sandalwood comb to gently comb her long, black hair. Gu Xingyin squinted her eyes and sighed, these days are indeed comfortable. Lord Lan Ling, I heard that a group of wild Taoists came to our Lan Ling's territory recently. Many lonely souls and ghosts have already come to complain to us. After cleaning Gu Xingyin's face, Weiwei took a step back and said respectfully to Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin supported her head with one hand and replied faintly, Weiwei lowered her head and said, I'm willing to share your burden and chase those daring Taoists out of Lan Ling. No need. Gu Xingyin said softly. Lord Lan Ling. Weiwei raised her head and was surprised. Lord, are you not going to care about this matter? I'll go and meet these people personally. Gu Xingyin had nothing to do. She knew that Ghost King Lan Ling was quite powerful in this world, but she had not experienced it personally. She might as well try it out on those wild Taoists. Those Taoist priests probably weren't disciples of any righteous sections. Those with a bit of background would not be able to bypass him, the ruler in the dark. Hearing Gu Xingyin's words, he was slightly delighted. However, she immediately hesitated and said, it's just a few weak Taoists. There's no need to trouble Sir to deal with them personally. Gu Xingyin lowered her eyes and looked at her faintly. She lowered her head slightly and said, I have overstepped my bounds. What qualifications did she have to speculate about His Excellency's thoughts? In a wilderness in the Lanling region, 3 figures dressed in green robes were walking slowly with swords in their hands. Brother One, it is said that the evil spirits in the Orchid Land are ferocious. Many of our fellow Taoists do not dare to come here. In my opinion, it's just so, a tall and thin Taoist priest said with a self-satisfied smile. The one called Brother One was slightly plump and had a mustache. There was a cunning look in his eyes. Hearing the tall and thin Taoist's words, he couldn't help but stroke his mustache and said with a smile, that's why those righteous sects are just fishing for fame. They have so many disciples, but they don't even dare to enter the Lanling. Is that so? A faint female voice entered the ears of the three people. Unknowingly, a cold wind suddenly blew in this wilderness and a thick fog appeared from the ground. In just a moment, the surroundings were covered in a grey fog. The three people were close together and could barely see each other's figures. The sky darkened visibly. Just a moment ago, the sun was shining brightly in the sky. Now, there were gusts of cold wind, causing them to shiver uncontrollably. Chapter 1150. This is. The expression of the tall and skinny man, who had a smug look on his face earlier, changed instantly. If they still could not tell that this was done on purpose, the three of them would have wasted their years of cultivation. The man who had been silent all this while had a pale complexion and a green headscarf on his head. He took out a copper bagua mirror with a flip of his hand. He tossed the bagua mirror above his head. The bagua mirror immediately flashed with a golden light, illuminating the situation within a 2-meter radius. Clearly, this was a good magic tool. Seeing the situation around him, the slightly plump Taoist felt much more at ease. He also regained his previous eloquence. Brother Zhang's 8 trigrams mirror is indeed a top-notch magic tool. With Brother Zhang here, why should we be afraid of those ghosts? Before he could finish, the surrounding yin wind suddenly blew even more violently. There were even traces of crying and wailing in the wind. Under such circumstances, it was even more horrifying. The 8 trigrams treasure mirror in the air seemed to be unable to withstand the unknown power and began to sway. Not good. The middle-aged scholar's complexion changed, and he quickly took out several talismans from his bosom, bit his middle finger, and muttered an incantation. Bursts of golden light rushed towards the 8 trigrams mirror as he chanted, trying to stabilize it. However, it was useless. In the growing yin wind, the bagua mirror was like a small boat in the middle of the ocean. It was in danger of capsizing at any time. The middle-aged man's already pale face became even paler. There was no trace of blood. "The two of you, lend me a hand," he shouted in a low voice. The two beside him seemed to have felt the power of their opponent. When the three of them came to Orchid Mountain, they had heard from some of their fellow Taoists that this area had an owner. The ghosts here were not evil. They were warned to be careful and avoid this place. However, the three of them were confident in their abilities. They had subdued a few ghosts with average strength in the few days they had been in Orchid Mountain. They became arrogant and thought that those people were just exaggerating. However, after encountering the situation in front of them, the three of them realized that they were just being arrogant. There seemed to be a woman's eerie voice coming from the chilly wind. "The three of you, why did you come to my cave? Did you see me, living alone for so many years and feel lonely?" At the same time, the 8 trigrams mirror in the air seemed to be unable to bear the burden. After shaking a few times, it finally let out a clear shattering sound and fell to the ground. The magic tool was connected to its owner's mind. The middle-aged scholar spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper. It was obvious that his injuries were not light. Without the 8 trigrams mirror, the surroundings returned to darkness. Only now did the three of them truly realize the lingering fear. They had already lost a powerful magic tool and injured a person, but they didn't even know what the other party was. The tall and thin Taoist priest suddenly became agitated. He pulled out his sword and suddenly slashed towards the thick fog. He cursed, "Where did this monster come from? Pretending to be mysterious. If you have the ability, let's do it face to face." Pa! Suddenly, a branch of a tree leaf appeared out of nowhere and slapped him hard on the face. In an instant, half of the Taoist priest's face swelled up. He swung his sword in that direction and found that it was just an ordinary tree branch. The tall and thin Taoist priest didn't dare to speak anymore. Chapter 1151. Not far from the three of them, a woman in red was sitting quietly on a high branch of a big tree that was very luxuriant. She was looking at them with interest. Her red dress was bright red and there were no other colors on it. Her long, ink-like hair casually fell down. A silver mask gently covered her face. Only her red lips could be seen curling up as if she was in a good mood. What was strange was that not far away, where the three of them were, the sky was dark and gloomy and the wind was howling. However, where the woman was, the sun was shining brightly. Sporadic sunlight shone on her face through the dense branches and leaves, but there was no shadow on the ground. Interesting. Gu Xingyin's red lips parted slightly as she said these two words. The strength of Ghost King Lan Ling was beyond her imagination. She was not afraid of sunlight and could affect the climate. This was no longer the strength of a ghost. It was close to the strength of a ghost god. It was no wonder that the divine court would send an edict. Her strength was not inferior to the righteous gods of the divine court. The feeling of the warm sunlight shining on her body was not bad. Of course, it was not very good either. After all, as a ghost, she preferred a cold and gloomy environment. Although the sunlight did not pose any danger to her, it made her instinctively dislike it. Gu Xingyin was in a good mood as she watched the three Taoist priests explore the enchantment that she had casually set up like a maze. At this time, there should be a pot of wine, she said casually. The next moment, a pot of wine appeared in front of her. Gu Xingyin paused. She did not take the pot of wine. Instead, she looked at the hand holding the pot. It was a hand with an almost perfect shape. The joints were slender and the skin was fair. However, it was not as delicate as a woman's. It was a man's hand. It could silently come to Gu Xingyin's side without her noticing. Perhaps it should be said that it was a very powerful man's hand. The next moment, a scorching breath fell on her ear. What's wrong? The great ghost King Lan Ling doesn't even dare to accept a jug of wine. The sound was very pleasant to the ears. If Gu Xingyin had to describe it, it would probably be the sound of icy spring water splashing and jade colliding. According to the legends, when the phoenix spread its wings and let out a cry, it had the ability to make all living things come back to life. Tens of thousands of flowers bloomed together, just like heavenly music. Although the sound before his eyes wasn't as earth-shattering, it wasn't far off in terms of how pleasant it was. Gu Xingyin's expression did not change. She turned her head and looked up along the hand. The same red robe, the same long black hair. Looking up, it was a handsome face that could make all living things go crazy. As a man, the appearance of the man in front of her was enough to make all the women in the world feel ashamed. Of course, this did not include Gu Xingyin. She was a ghost. Seeing Gu Xingyin's cold eyes looking at him, the red-robed man smiled. Between his eyebrows, there was a soul-stirring beauty. Your Highness of the Phoenix clan has lowered yourself to come here. This tree is indeed blessed. Gu Xingyin said lightly. She wasn't wrong. The tree she was standing on was originally just an ordinary tree. But first, she, the ghost King Lan Ling, who was about to ascend to the position of a god, came here. Then, the symbol of the divine clan, the auspicious phoenix, stopped by. This was considered a great fortune. Not long after, this tree would become sentient and become a spiritual object. When the man heard her words, he seemed a little surprised. He did not expect that the first thing the ghost King Lan Ling said when she saw him was about this unremarkable tree. Chapter 1152. She was truly an extraordinary woman. The man gently lifted the lid of the wine pot, and a rich wine aroma wafted out. Gu Xingyin's eyes lit up, the snow in a cup from the ninth heaven. Lan Ling Ghost King was addicted to wine, and she knew almost all of the famous wines in the world. The man chuckled, that's right. Gu Xingyin stretched out her hand, ready to take the pot of wine. Snow in a cup was a rare item, and it was not often seen. Unfortunately, before her hand could touch the pot of wine, the man's palm shook, and the pot of wine disappeared without a trace. Gu Xingyin's face turned cold. "You tricked me." A chilly aura was emitted from her body, and the surrounding ground was even covered with a layer of frost. Lan Ling Ghost King's dignity could not be offended, even if the other party was a phoenix born from the divine clan. The most miserable ones were the 3 Taoist priests in the array. They had been trapped in the black fog, and were often attacked by unknown creatures, so their minds and bodies were already exhausted to the extreme. Now that the temperature suddenly dropped, the 3 of them could not help but shiver. At this moment, the 3 of them were not as high-spirited as they were when they first arrived. It was too late for regrets in their hearts. If they had known, they would have listened to the words of their fellow Taoists. Lan Ling was not a place they could come to. Now, the only thing the 3 of them hoped for was that the ghosts in Lan Ling were really as rumored, and did not harm people's lives, but only wanted to punish them. Looking at Gu Xingyin's cold eyes, the man still smiled naturally. "No, no, no, I originally wanted to give this pot of wine to Lan Ling, but now I suddenly changed my mind." As he spoke, his body suddenly moved closer to Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin's heart trembled, and wanted to retreat, but she realized that the man had unknowingly set up a barrier around her. She could not break free for a moment. The man's fingers were already caressing her cheeks. The broken silver mask was like snowflakes, falling from Gu Xingyin's face, and her complete face was revealed to the man. Gu Xingyin clearly saw a trace of surprise in his eyes. The man looked at her with blurred eyes. "It's really gorgeous." In the next moment, his expression changed drastically, and he retreated in a flash. But he was still a step too late. When he raised his head again, there was a deep wound on his handsome face, so deep that his bones could be seen. Golden blood dripped from the wound and turned into a cluster of golden sparks as soon as it left his body, turning into ashes as it fell to the ground. He reached out and wiped his face, and the wound instantly healed. "What a ruthless ghost King Lan Ling," the man looked at Gu Xingyin with a smile. Gu Xingyin lowered her eyes and looked at her bright red nails. "What I want to cut is your throat." The man chuckled mysteriously. His expression suddenly changed as he tilted his head to listen for something. Suddenly, he raised his hand and tossed something to Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin took a closer look, and saw that it was the wine in the pot of wine. "I originally wanted to get drunk with Lan Ling, but unfortunately, I have something to do. I will come again." His figure suddenly became illusory, and he turned into a red stream of light and disappeared. A red feather with a transparent flame fell from the sky and landed on Gu Xingyin's shoulder. Gu Xingyin reached out and took the feather. The flame on it was not hot, and was even very gentle. At the base of the feather, there was a small golden word Ling. Chapter 1153. It seemed that this was the name of the flamboyant phoenix. Gu Xingyin raised her hand to destroy the feather, but after thinking that the feather of a phoenix was a rare treasure, she kept it in her sleeve. However, she did not know that she had dug a hole for herself. When she realized it in the future, it would be too late. At this moment, the system's voice sounded, filled with confusion, "Host, I don't understand." Gu Xingyin raised her eyebrows. The system said honestly, "Why did the host try to kill that phoenix?" Gu Xingyin paused. "You know who he is?" The system replied, "Yes, host." Strictly speaking, the system and the host's souls are linked, so it can sense some things. For example, that phoenix is the host's lover. Gu Xingyin looked at the system curiously. The soul contract sounded a little novel to him. She knew what it meant. Linking souls meant that if an accident happened to one party, the other party would sense it and bear the damage together. She had signed a contract with the system since she was born, but this was the first time she knew that the two of them were linked souls. However, does the system have a soul too? The system. It seemed that it had accidentally exposed something terrible. It said calmly, "The host's authority is insufficient, the system cannot tell you." Gu Xingyin, this system would use this trick every time it did not want to answer. After encountering this phoenix, Gu Xingyin did not have the mood to torment the three Taoist priests. She waved her hand, and the three Taoist priests felt a gust of demonic wind. When they came back to their senses, they realized that they had arrived at the peak of an extremely tall mountain. They could not even see the way down the mountain. Could it be that the person behind this wanted to kill the three of them in this deserted place? The three of them were shocked by their own imagination. Suddenly, a ghostly female voice came from midair. It wanted the three of them to not eat or drink, and recite sutras to expiate the souls of all the ghosts in the Lanling area for a whole year to atone for their sins. If they were unwilling, they could choose to jump down from here. Gu Xingyin mercifully gave the three of them two options. In the end, the three Taoist priests chose to release the souls of the dead with bitter expressions on their faces. Gu Xingyin turned into a gust of cold wind and returned to her palace. Next, he just had to wait for the supporting female lead to sneak out from the mountain gate to find him. Gu Xingyin was quite interested in the naive Jiangling, her. "Lord Lanling," a voice called out from outside the hall. It was Jin's voice. Jin entered the main hall respectfully and knelt down the moment he saw Gu Xingyin. "Lord Lanling, I beg you to save Wei Wei." "What happened?" Gu Xingyin frowned. Jin's face paled. She clenched her teeth and told him everything. It turned out that Gu Xingyin had said a few days ago that she was going to deal with the three Taoist priests personally. She had asked Wei Wei and Jin, who had always been serving her, to go out and play by themselves. Jin had a lively personality. She dragged Wei Wei to make a white porcelain doll for each of them and went out to play in the human world. Little did she know that this trip would cause Wei Wei to fall into danger. It turned out that it was August's Lantern Festival in the human world. Wei Wei was considered a stunning beauty in the human world. During the Lantern Festival, she fell in love with a scholar in the human world. Since ancient times, love between a human and a ghost rarely had a good ending. Moreover, most of the unfaithful were scholars. Wei Wei fell in love with him and could not get out. Chapter 1154. Wei Wei had been careful not to let the scholar know that she was not human. But there were masters in the human world. When the scholar went out to buy something, he was stopped by a wandering Taoist, who told him that his face was dark and that he might be haunted by ghosts. The scholar did not believe these things, but the Taoist's words made sense and he was swayed. He tried the method that the Taoist taught him and it was incredible. The scholar almost fainted on the spot. However, he managed to hold himself back. Without even asking, he rushed out of the door and found the Taoist, asking him to help him deal with the female ghost in the house. He did not mention anything about the love between him and Wei Wei these days. He only said that the female ghost must be here to take his life. When the Taoist heard that it was a ghost that wanted to kill people, he would not let her go. He immediately followed the scholar home. Poor Wei Wei, who had prepared a table of food and was waiting for her lover to come home, did not expect that she would be greeted with a bastard. The Taoist was also capable. Wei Wei had been with Ghost King Lanling for many years. Although her skills were not superb, she was much more powerful than the average ghost. But she was still no match for the Taoist. Of course, Wei Wei was not happy to be betrayed by the lover she cared about. She looked at the scholar with all her might. "Why? I've been treating you well with all my heart. Was the sincerity we've been showing during this time all fake?" She had shown her ghost true form. She was dressed in white and her face was pale. She still looked the same as usual. But the scholar only felt that she was eerie and did not dare to look at her. The scholar hid behind the Taoist, as if the Taoist's existence gave him strength. He said to Wei Wei, since ancient times, ghosts have always been different. Moreover, who knows why you got close to me? Who knows if your so-called sincerity all these days was just a show to numb me? Although Wei Wei was a ghost, she died at a young age. After becoming a female ghost, she had been serving Ghost King Lanling in the yin-yang world. How could she have seen the evil in people's hearts? She actually didn't know how to refute such ugly and shameless words. He could only glare angrily at the scholar with his eyes wide open. She looked really scary. When the Taoist saw her, he thought that Wei Wei was really an evil ghost that wanted to kill people. Wei Wei was not a match for the Taoist. She desperately sent a message for help to Ah Jin, who was like a sister to her, before she was taken into the Taoist's instrument. Ah Jin thought that she was not a match for the Taoist, which was why she dared to ask Gu Xingyin for help. Although the two sisters had persuaded Lanling for many years, to be honest, they were not close to Ghost King Lanling. This was because Lanling had a cold personality to begin with, and because she was powerful, normal ghosts could not even withstand the pressure from her body, let alone get close to her. The ghosts of Lanling had always been respectful and avoided being close to her. Naturally, Gu Xingyin couldn't just stand by and do nothing. As she instructed Ah Jin to lead the way, she instructed the system to check on Wei Wei's whereabouts. Fortunately, the system's result. The Taoist was not a bloodthirsty person. Although Wei Wei showed signs of turning into a demon, she did not have any negative karma. In other words, this female ghost had not killed anyone. He rejected the scholar's suggestion of burning the female ghost. Instead, he locked her in the Taoist's instrument and chanted the mind-cleansing mantra every day, hoping that she would repent in time. 6 chapters in the morning. Gao Lingji could not take it anymore and wanted to sleep. Sleepy, there are 2 chapters left. I'll make up for it tomorrow. Also, I want to ask for monthly votes. I made a wish last week that exceeded 10,000 votes. It has already been fulfilled. In the last week of the month, I still need more than 300 votes to enter the top 5 in the monthly votes category. If you have votes, don't keep them. Vote for Gigi. She is so hungry. Chapter 1155. Even Gu Xingyin was speechless when she saw the Taoist priest's actions. This Taoist priest had a point, right? He sealed Wei Wei without knowing the situation, so he could not tell right from wrong. However, after he captured Wei Wei, he did not kill her. He did not even take any drastic measures because she did not have any blood energy. He even chanted the clear mind spell to get rid of her inner demons. Gu Xingyin was curious. What kind of Taoist priest could do this? The 2 ghosts moved quickly. Even from afar, Gu Xingyin could sense a righteous Taoist aura. The aura was long and condensed. It was obvious that the other party's cultivation had reached a certain level. It was no wonder that Wei Wei was no match for him. Gu Xingyin raised her hand and a boundary covered the entire courtyard. Who is this Taoist priest? How dare you behave so atrociously in the hell of Lanling? The Taoist priest who had been sitting in the scholar's room opened his eyes in surprise. He did not sense anyone's arrival. It was obvious that this person was more powerful than him. At least, this person's concealment ability was better than his. Gu Xingyin's telegnosis ability passed through the window and landed on the Taoist priest. He was surprisingly young. This Taoist priest looked to be in his 20s. He was wearing a simple green Taoist robe. His hair was fixed with a bamboo hairpin. His face was gentle and delicate. He looked amiable. The Taoist priest pushed open the door and saw Gu Xingyin and Jin standing in the courtyard. He sized up Gu Xingyin and bowed. Are you the Ghost King Lanling? Gu Xingyin snorted. Taoist priest, you know me too. The Taoist priest smiled. Who doesn't know the name of the Ghost King Lanling? Gu Xingyin sneered. Alright, don't flatter me. I'm just here to see what kind of Taoist priest dares to touch my people. The Taoist priest knew something was wrong when he heard Gu Xingyin's tone. He cupped his fists at Gu Xingyin and said, "Your subordinate's girl is too vicious. I have no other choice." Too vicious. Gu Xingyin repeated these words and suddenly stretched out her hand. A small gourd from the Taoist priest's waist appeared in Gu Xingyin's hand. The Taoist priest's expression changed. This was his magic tool, but it was powerless against the Ghost King. The strength of this Ghost King was probably even greater than what most people thought. Gu Xingyin's hands shook slightly, and a wisp of green smoke spread out from the gourd, gradually turning into the figure of a woman. It was Wei Wei. At this moment, Wei Wei's eyes were still a little wild. Seeing that she was free, she wanted to pounce out. Wei Wei. The deep and cold voice was like a heavy hammer that slammed into Wei Wei's ears, waking her up from her muddled thoughts. Wei Wei looked at Gu Xingyin next to her, and her face turned pale. She walked in front of her and knelt down. "Greetings, Lord." Gu Xingyin looked at her calmly, but she did not ask her to get up. Instead, she turned to the Taoist priest. "Does my servant have any sins?" The Taoist priest lowered his eyes. "No." "Does my servant have any evil intentions towards you?" The Taoist priest shook his head. "No." "Did my servant cause any harm to that scholar?" The Taoist priest understood what she meant. He shook his head with a bitter smile. "No." Before Gu Xingyin could ask the fourth question, the Taoist priest had already bowed to Gu Xingyin. "I did not think it through. Please forgive me, Ghost King Lanling." Chapter 1156. After he finished speaking, he bowed to Wei Wei, who was still kneeling on the ground. "I did not carefully verify the truth of the matter and acted rashly. Please forgive me." Wei Wei continued to kneel on the ground and ignored him. Gu Xingyin glanced at Wei Wei and said in a low voice, "Get up." Wei Wei then obeyed and got up. Her face was pale and it was obvious that her spiritual body had been injured. Gu Xingyin scanned with her spiritual sense and made a grabbing motion in a certain direction. A strong gust of wind brought the guilty scholar who was peeping from another room to the courtyard. Ouch! Gu Xingyin was not in the mood to be gentle with the scholar. He directly threw him to the ground, causing the scholar to fall hard on the ground. The scholar cried out on the ground and saw that no one was paying attention to him. He raised his head carefully in Gu Xingyin's direction. He saw Gu Xingyin's cold silver mask and eyes. Ghost! He got up from the ground and ran behind the Taoist priest. "Taoist priest, this ghost must have been summoned by the evil ghost from before. You have to help me." He did not dare to raise his head and only tugged at the Taoist priest's robe. Wei Wei lowered her head and did not look at the man who had been so affectionate with her the day before. Gu Xingyin did not allow her to do so. "Wei Wei, raise your head." Wei Wei's body shook when she heard this. She raised her head and looked at Gu Xingyin in confusion. Gu Xingyin's face was expressionless. "Don't look at me. Look at that man." She looked calmly at the trembling man who was hiding behind the Taoist priest in green. Her eyes were full of disdain. "Take a good look. Is this the man you fell in love with? He is wretched, irresponsible and has a heart of stone." Each sentence was heavier than the last. It was like thunder in Wei Wei's ears and destroyed the last bit of hesitation and hope in her heart. Yes, what was she looking forward to in her heart? Could it be that by not looking and not thinking, she could pretend that everything that had happened did not exist? This man was really a scumbag. Wei Wei's expression hardened as she stared coldly at him. The man turned his head and met Wei Wei's gaze. His eyes flickered and he turned his head away, not daring to face Wei Wei. The last glimmer of hope in Weiwei's heart was extinguished. Su Lian, I will only ask you one question. Answer me honestly. Weiwei looked at the scholar without blinking. The scholar hid behind the Taoist priest and replied in a low, muffled voice, ask away. She looked at his face and saw that he did not even dare to look at her. She smiled sadly and said, during this period of time, are your feelings for me sincere? Gu Xingyin lowered his eyes. Only a girl like Weiwei, who had never experienced love before, would ask such a question at a time like this. Su Lian was obviously an extremely selfish person who cherished his own life. The most important thing for such a person would always be himself. Sure enough, the man did not speak for a long time. In the end, he only said, Weiwei, why did you lie to me? Lie to him? Weiwei smiled bitterly. It turned out that her feelings for him during this period of time were just a scam in his eyes. She heard something break in her heart. She turned her head, not wanting to look at the man anymore. Gu Xingyin said coldly, you bullied my people. I will not let it go so easily. She looked at Weiwei. You make your own decision. These two people, she pointed at the scholar and the Taoist priest in green. How should we deal with them? Obviously, she was not going to let them go. Weiwei was stunned. She had not thought about this. Chapter 1157. She hesitated for a moment and looked at Gu Xingyin pleadingly. Seeing her like this, Gu Xingyin sighed in her heart. What should she do with such a soft personality? Never mind, Lanling Ghost Lord would never allow herself to be taken advantage of and Weiwei would not. Let her be the bad guy. She pointed her finger and the scholar hiding behind the Taoist priest in green was brought in front of Gu Xingyin by invisible shackles. The scholar trembled all over and did not dare to look up at Gu Xingyin. He did not know why, but the female ghost in red did not look scary, but he did not dare to look at her face. He felt that she had an aura that he could not resist. Save me, Taoist priest. He could only plead to the Taoist priest in green behind him. The Taoist priest in green did not have the heart to look at him, but when Gu Xingyin looked at him, he realized that he could not move his body at all. Gu Xingyin looked at him with a half-smile and said, you can't even protect yourself. Don't get involved in other people's business, little Taoist priest. She slowly said, wait until I've dealt with this useless human, then I'll deal with you. The Taoist priest in green smiled bitterly. It seemed that things would not end well today. The scholar's face turned pale. Even the powerful Taoist priest could not do anything to this female ghost in red. Was he going to die today? His thoughts turned and he finally thought of Weiwei, who was standing silently beside Gu Xingyin. He raised his head and looked at Weiwei affectionately. Weiwei, Weiwei. I didn't do it on purpose. I really like you. It's just that. I was blinded when I heard that you weren't human. Can you give me a chance? Gu Xingyin did not move and allowed this human to confess to Weiwei affectionately. From her point of view as a bystander, this human's acting was very bad. He was just using Weiwei as his last hope. However, a bystander would see things clearly. Usually, the person in charge would not be able to tell. Gu Xingyin wanted to see Weiwei's reaction. As expected, Weiwei's expression changed several times when she heard his words. She turned to look at Gu Xingyin. Lord Lanling, Gu Xingyin's expression was calm as she lightly said, I'll leave the choice in your hands. If you want to release him, I won't make things difficult for him. When the scholar Su Lian heard this, his heart was filled with hope. He looked at Weiwei with even more sincerity. Weiwei, I know that I was wrong. When this matter is over, let's start anew and get back together, okay? She lowered her eyes and looked at the man on the ground. It was this man, with such a deep gaze, that made her fall in love with him without any resistance. But it was also this man who looked at her coldly with a pair of eyes that were like the sea and called her a ghost that harmed people. She suddenly chuckled. Wei Wei was very pretty to begin with. When she smiled, it was as if the cold moon had broken through the dark clouds and shone on the earth. Not to mention the scholar, even the Taoist priest in green who was not far away was stunned for a moment. When the scholar saw her smile, he was delighted. He thought that she still had feelings for him. However, the next moment, he heard the woman in front of him say, "Start anew? Get back together." "No, Su Lian, this kind of thing disgusts me." Chapter 1158. Not only was the scholar stunned, even Gu Xingyin looked at Wei Wei in surprise. She did not expect that Wei Wei, who had always been elegant and indifferent, would say such words. After Wei Wei finished speaking, she did not want to look at the scholar anymore. She turned to look at Gu Xingyin. She said, "Lord Lan Ling, Wei Wei has a request." Gu Xingyin was very satisfied with her reaction just now. Her tone could not help but become much gentler. "Go ahead." Wei Wei lowered her head. "I don't want to see that human again." Gu Xingyin chuckled. "Okay, I know what you mean." When the Taoist priest in green heard this, his expression changed. When he heard Wei Wei say that she did not want to see that scholar, he subconsciously thought that she was going to kill him. He wanted to stop her. This was not because of compassion, but because the ghosts he saw today, whether it was Ghost Lord Lan Ling or the two female ghosts under her command, were all ghosts with temperament. They were not evil people. There was no need for them to bear the sin of killing because of Su Lian. Ghosts were different from humans. They also needed to cultivate and go through the thunder tribulation. If ghosts were stained with human lives and sins, there were very few who could survive the thunder tribulation. But before he could say anything, Gu Xingyin had already made her move. She drew a line in the air with her hands. A blood-red mysterious rune flew toward Su Lian. It quickly disappeared into his body and disappeared without a trace. Su Lian looked at Gu Xingyin in horror. He did not know what she had done to him. Gu Xingyin seemed to be in a good mood after doing this. The corners of her red lips could not help but curl up. Her ink-black eyes met with Su Lian's frightened eyes, and she actually laughed softly. "I am in a good mood today. I will tell you what I did just now. I placed a curse on your body. Don't worry, it won't be a threat to your life. I just need you to do some small things. You have to remember what I'm going to say next. Every day, you have to donate all of your wealth to the poor people around you. You only need to keep enough money for 2 meals of plain steamed buns. You are not allowed to drink alcohol, gamble, flirt, or fight with dogs. You have to study hard every day. You are not allowed to teach students without remuneration. You are not allowed to enter the bureaucracy. You are not allowed to live in a luxurious mansion. You are not allowed to be rich." Gu Xingyin enunciated each and every word, ignoring the scholar's widening eyes, and said the last thing she wanted to say. "After 3 days, you are not allowed to enter the Lanling district. If you can't do what I've said, you can experience the consequences yourself." Her sinister voice made the scholar shudder. He didn't want to know the consequences of her words. However, if what she said was true, then he might as well die for all he cared. The scholar stood up shakily and wanted to say something. Gu Xingyin looked at him with disdain. "All right, I've said what I wanted to say. You can scram now. You don't have to be an eyesore here." She waved her long sleeves and the scholar disappeared without a trace. Once again, Gu Xingyin met the Taoist priest's complicated eyes. She smiled and said, "Don't worry, I've cast a protective spell on his body. It will ensure that he will live a long life without any illness or pain." The Taoist priest in green, given the scholar's situation, it would be better for him to die. However, this female ghost did not even give him the chance to die. He secretly made a decision. No matter who he provoked in the future, he would never provoke the Lanling Ghost King. Chapter 1159. Now, it's your turn. Gu Xingyin looked at the scholar lazily, as if she was thinking about what to do. The Taoist priest in green stood there calmly. He could neither fight nor run, so he could only stand there and wait for the trial. Gu Xingyin turned to look at Weiwei, who had been silent the whole time. Tell me, how should we deal with this stupid Taoist priest who hurt you? Weiwei looked up at the Taoist priest in green, lowered her head and said softly, Lord Lanling, this Taoist priest did not hurt me. He was just deceived by a scoundrel. She meant that she was letting him go. Gu Xingyin glanced at the Taoist priest in green, and suddenly said, Since Weiwei is pleading for mercy, I will not say anything. Weiwei was imprisoned in a magic weapon by you, and her origin was hurt. Little Taoist priest, I heard that you Taoists have a way to calm the mind, so I will leave Weiwei to you. You must help her recover her lost strength. After she finished speaking, she turned into a ray of light and disappeared into the sky. Only a faint voice was left in their ears. I will come and see the results after a while. Weiwei and the Taoist priest in green stood awkwardly in the courtyard. Weiwei was a little embarrassed. Lord Lanling was just saying. She would not have the time to investigate. I will find a place to rest for a while. No. The Taoist priest in green smiled gently and looked at Weiwei's beautiful face. Lord Lanling is right. I hurt you by accident, so I should be responsible for your recovery. Gu Xingyin brought Jin back to the yin-yang world. After Jin left, Gu Xingyin went into seclusion. She had to improve her strength quickly. Otherwise, in the original plot, the 69 heavenly tribulations would take away half of her life. When Gu Xingyin woke up from seclusion again, she did not wake up naturally. Someone had violated the restriction she had set outside the hall. Gu Xingyin opened her eyes, and the system in her mind told her that Jiangling was here. Her spiritual sense instantly spread out and landed on the little girl holding the sword outside. Jiangling was 16 years old. Her face was pure and beautiful, and her light blue dress made her look like a lotus flower that had just emerged from the water. A girl of this age, even if she didn't put on any makeup, would still have the aura and beauty of a rising sun. As expected of the name Ling. Sensing it with rapt attention, Jiangling current strength was roughly at Jin's level. Gu Xingyin could only say that she was able to break through the layers of obstacles in the yin-yang world and come to his palace without anyone noticing. Coincidence was indeed powerful. Hee. At this moment, Jiangling was cautiously walking outside the hall. This time, she secretly took the concealment magic tool from her sect and came alone to find the legendary ghost king Lanling. The fearless little girl actually showed a rare trace of hesitation when she saw the majestic hall in front of her. Jianglinger, don't be afraid. You are the heroine who wants to capture Lanling Ghost King alive. She comforted herself and walked step by step to the door of the hall. Just as Jiangling was about to push open the door, the tightly shut door suddenly rumbled and slowly opened inwards. Jiangling jumped in fright. She placed her sword in front of her chest and said loudly, Ghost King Lanling, are you here? A red figure slowly appeared in her field of vision. Chapter 1160. Jiangling couldn't help but open her eyes wide, as if she was stunned by the person who slowly appeared from the darkness. Even the sword in her hand was unconsciously put down. What a beautiful person. She sighed in her heart and immediately woke up. No, this was the yin-yang world, the lair of Ghost King Lanling. How could there be someone here? The person in front of her was definitely a female ghost. But, Jiang Ling couldn't help but secretly look at Gu Xingyin. This female ghost was really beautiful. Gu Xingyin looked at Jiang Ling. The other party's eyes were very clear, and the gaze she looked at her with undisguised shock and admiration. No one would feel disgusted by this gaze, including Gu Xingyin. She smiled and said, "Where did this human girl come from? This is not a place you should come to." Jiang Ling tried to straighten her expression and make her expression become serious. "I'm here to find someone." "No, I'm here to find a ghost," she said with a straight face. Gu Xingyin held back her laughter. Why didn't the original plot mention that Jiang Ling was such a cute girl? She followed Jiang Ling's words and asked, "Who are you looking for?" Jiang Ling looked at her with some vigilance. "Why are you asking so much?" Gu Xingyin said with a smile, "I've lived here for many, many years. The ghost you're looking for, I definitely know." Jiang Ling still didn't say anything. She was a person with principles. How could she tell this female ghost her purpose just because she was beautiful? Gu Xingyin saw her like this and really wanted to pinch her little face. She said, "Actually, even if you don't say it, I know who you're looking for." Jiang Ling didn't fall for it. "Then tell me, who am I looking for?" Gu Xingyin replied quickly, "You're looking for the famous ghost King Lan Ling, right?" Jiang Ling's eyes widened. "How do you know?" Gu Xingyin finally couldn't help but laugh. "There's nothing in this world that I don't know." Jiang Ling felt that the person in front of her was very mysterious. She couldn't help but ask, "Since you know who I'm looking for, can you take me to him?" Gu Xingyin purposely said, "Why would I bring you to Ghost King Lan Ling? Furthermore, how do you know if the Lan Ling Ghost King I brought you to is the real Lan Ling Ghost King?" She was deliberately making things difficult for Jiang Ling. Who would have thought that Ling would actually think about it carefully before nodding and saying, "You're right. My master told me that if I ask for help, I have to prepare a gift. Although you're not human, I'm sure the logic is the same." She looked around and took out an exquisite jade buckle from her waist. "This jade buckle is a present that my master personally found for my coming-of-age ceremony. It's a Dharma artifact that can nurture spiritual bodies. It should be very useful for a ghost like you." As she spoke, she raised her head and asked Gu Xingyin, "I'll use this to exchange for information about Ghost King Lan Ling. How about that?" She was very generous, Gu Xingyin thought in her heart. "As for your second question," Jiang Ling frowned. Jiang Ling frowned and seemed a little troubled. Then, she looked at Gu Xingyin's face and suddenly became clear. "You're so good-looking. You definitely won't lie to me." Gu Xingyin, what kind of logic was that? If she was beautiful, she wouldn't lie? Gu Xingyin was stunned for a rare moment. However, she quickly regained her calm expression and didn't even notice Jiang Ling. Chapter 1161. Jiang Linger only saw a figure flash in front of her. The red-clothed female ghost, who was several feet away from her, suddenly appeared beside her. She didn't have the cold feeling of an ordinary ghost. Jiang Linger even smelled a faint fragrance from her body. She didn't know what kind of perfume it was, but it smelled very good. Jiang Linger was a little greedy. She took a deep breath and completely ignored the other party's unusual speed. How could an ordinary ghost have that kind of speed? "You really think I'm pretty?" Gu Xingyin bent down to Jiang Linger. She was taller than the other party. When she bent down slightly, she was face to face with Jiang Linger. Their faces were only an inch apart. Facing Gu Xingyin's cold and charming face at such a close distance, Jiang Linger's face blushed. She completely forgot that the other party was a ghost she hated. Her mind was full of paste and she only felt that something was beating fast in her heart. After a while, she stepped back a few steps as if she had stepped on something. When she felt that the distance between her and the other party was normal, she looked at Gu Xingyin with a red face. You ghosts are all like this, like this. She wanted to find a suitable adjective, but she suddenly found that she was at a loss for words. After a long time, Jiang Linger finally squeezed out a complete sentence. Are you so passionate? Gu Xingyin looked at her and raised the corner of her mouth. No, I'm only passionate about good-looking girls. Jiang Linger's face, which had just cooled down, turned red again because of her words. Obviously, the other party was a female ghost. Why was she blushing? Gu Xingyin looked at the other party's red face and thought that it should be nice to touch, but... She looked at Jiang Linger regretfully. Forget it. She would probably be scared if she touched her. Jiang Linger took a few deep breaths and asked seriously, do you really know where Ghost King Lanling is? Gu Xingyin nodded. Jiang Linger's eyes lit up. Then can you take me to find him? Gu Xingyin pretended to hesitate. It's not impossible, she looked at Jiang Linger's joyful eyes and asked, but why are you looking for Ghost King Lanling? Fortunately, Jiang Linger was not that stupid. She said, just take me there. Gu Xingyin said casually, then do you know where we are? Linger was just randomly found. How could he know? Gu Xingyin said, the hall in front of you is Ghost King Lanling's palace. Jiang Linger's expression turned solemn when she heard this. However, she quickly realized that something was amiss. Just now, the red-dressed female ghost seemed to have come from this hall. Jiang Linger looked at Gu Xingyin suspiciously. Gu Xingyin allowed her to size him up. The girl finally realized that something was wrong. Unexpectedly, the next moment, Jiang Linger looked at her with understanding. I was wondering how a beautiful female ghost like you could be an ordinary ghost. You came out of Ghost King Lanling's palace and said that you can find him. You are Ghost King Lanling's concubine, right? Gu Xingyin, your analysis seems to make sense. I have nothing to say. Jiang Linger continued, don't worry. I don't need you to take me there. You just need to tell me where Ghost King Lanling is. I will find him myself. I promise I won't tell you. Gu Xingyin said faintly, there's no need. She's right beside you. Chapter 1162. Hearing Gu Xingyin's words, Jiang Linger's first reaction was to look behind her. There was nothing behind her. Jiang Linger turned around and looked at Gu Xingyin suspiciously. You're lying to me. There's no Lanling Ghost King. As she spoke, her eyes suddenly widened. She stared at Gu Xingyin in disbelief. Gu Xingyin looked at her calmly. A possibility flashed through Jiang Linger's mind. She couldn't help but swallow her saliva. That Lanling Ghost King, is it a man or a woman? She looked at Gu Xingyin and asked. Gu Xingyin didn't answer. She only asked back, what do you think? Jiang Linger's body tensed up. In this mysterious place, there was a beautiful woman whose strength couldn't be determined. Also, she had only heard of the Lanling Ghost King. She heard her own voice saying dryly, legend has it that the Lanling Ghost King likes to wear red clothes and a sinister silver mask on his face. People can't see his face clearly. Her words came to a halt. This was because Gu Xingyin had taken out an extremely delicate silver mask at some point in time and gently covered his face with it. She looked at Jiang Linger with a smile in her eyes. Like this? A gust of wind came out of nowhere and blew her messy black hair. Against the silver mask, there was a murderous intent. Jiang Linger couldn't help but take 2 steps back. She used the sword in her hand to block in front of her. She felt that all this development was really out of her expectations. You're the Lanling Ghost King. Jiang Linger's voice was a little sharp because of her nervousness. Gu Xingyin felt that it was about time. She put away the smile on her face. In an instant, the aura that she deliberately restrained poured out and swept towards Jiangling, her. Jiangling, couldn't help but take a few steps back. So strong. She looked at the woman in red in front of her in shock. She still looked the same. But at this time, Jiangling, could no longer connect her with the beautiful woman she saw before. So strong, Jiangling had never felt such a strong aura even from her master. This feeling was like a harmless little beast raising its head and staring at an ancient ferocious beast whose eyes were closed and whose aura was like a mountain. The other party was like an insurmountable mountain. In front of the other party, she couldn't even summon the slightest thought of going against the other party. It's real. So, young lady, what brings you here to see me? Gu Xingyin's slow voice rang in Jiangling's ears. Jiangling was speechless. What was she going to say? He said that he came here to punish evil and uphold justice. He wanted to find Ghost King Lan Ling and have a duel with her. It would be best if he could defeat her and make a name for himself. How stupid was she to think that she could challenge the Lan Ling Phantom Lord, who ruled over tens of thousands of ghosts in the Lan Ling district. Some things, no matter how many times the elders said it, she wouldn't listen. Only when she experienced it herself could she understand the vastness of the world. She was really just a frog at the bottom of a well. Gu Xingyin looked at Jiangling's expression with interest. This silly girl. She must not know what she was thinking. It was all written on her face. Chapter 1163. Jiangling, tried to come up with an excuse in her mind. Got it. Her eyes lit up and she started to speak more fluently. I heard that Lan Ling Ghost King is very powerful and can command thousands of ghosts. I respect you a lot, so I want to come and meet you. She looked at Gu Xingyin with sincerity, trying to make her believe that what she said was true. The corners of Gu Xingyin's lips curled into a mysterious smile. Her smile was very soft, but it was clearly heard by Jiangling. Ling's eyes uncontrollably fell on the silver mask covering her face. From this angle, only the beautiful outline of her face and the perfect shape of her red lips could be seen. Even so, it did not stop people from imagining what kind of stunning beauty was under this eyesore of a mask. Rumors have misled me. Jiangling thought bitterly. According to the rumors, Lan Ling Ghost King was a ferocious ghost who liked to wear red clothes and a ferocious mask on her face. This was because outsiders rarely saw this Ghost King, and this was the only information they knew about him. But this did not stop them from imagining. So, in their imaginations, the image of Lan Ling Ghost King must be ferocious. The character of Lan Ling Ghost King must be ferocious. The appearance of Lan Ling Ghost King must be ferocious. The gender of Lan Ling Ghost King must be male. Really? A soft voice interrupted Jiangling's thoughts. Jiangling could not help but raise her head and found that the other party had come to her side. Gu Xingyin gently lifted Jiangling's chin. Don't lie to me. You should know that my character is not very good. His words were clearly soft and did not have any deterrent force, but Ling shuddered. She tried to keep her face calm and showed a smile. How can it be? I've never lied. Really? Gu Xingyin bent down and pressed her face down on Jiangling. She was getting closer and closer, and they were about to touch. Jiangling could not move at all and closed her eyes. A strange thought suddenly popped up in her mind. This Ghost King Lan Ling, don't tell me he likes girls. Open your eyes and look at me. The voice was so close that she couldn't help but open her eyes. The other party was very close to her, but they didn't touch. Ling's mind was completely attracted by the other party's ink-black eyes. She had never seen such beautiful eyes before. The other party's eyes were like the purest and darkest night sky. They seem to have the most fatal attraction, making people sink into them and unable to extricate themselves. Jiang Ling's face reddened visibly. But in the next moment, the other party's cold voice caused her body to tremble. Little Miss Ling, I'm sure you don't know that I have a secret technique called heart-searching. It was as if a basin of cold water was poured down from the top of his head. Ling's entire body stiffened. Probing the heart. Wouldn't that mean that the other party knew all of his thoughts? Then this ghost King Lan Ling must have known the reason for his visit. Oh no, oh no. Xiao Ling closed her eyes in despair. This time, she would definitely not let him off. Why did you close your eyes? Jiang Ling opened her eyes and looked at Gu Xingyin, who had already let go of her, with surprise. She didn't kill him. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.